From Carolla One Studios in Glendale, California, this is the Adam Carolla Show. Adam's guest today, from The Verdict with Ted Cruz, Michael Knowles, and Ted Cruz. With Gina on news, Paul Bryan on sound effects, and a spirited round of the Rotten Tomatoes game. And now, he wants the Redskins to change their name to the cheap jeans he had as a kid and become the Washington Toughskins. Adam Carolla.
Yeah, baby, with reinforced knees. Super denim.
Suck.
One day we'll make a power rankings of kids' pants. Good day, Gina Grad.
Good day to you.
Handball, Brian.
Inconceivable.
We had it would go super denim at the bottom. JCPenney's was always the bottom. There was something lower than Sears. That was JCPenney's.
I was going to say, wouldn't Sears be lower, but no.
Now, JCPenney's was lower, then it was Sears Toughskins, then it was Levi's. And also, much like stadium food, it took 50 years for stadiums and for Sears or JCPenney's or wherever we're going to have name brands that you enjoyed outside of the store or outside of the stadium. Like, the whole time I was growing up, thankfully, we never went to Dodger Stadium or Rams, the Coliseum, or went to any events. But if you went to an event, you got stadium food. You didn't get In-N-Out Burger, and you didn't get Jody Maroney hot dogs or anything. You just got food that the stadium had.
A pretzel or a hot dog or a nacho.
Yeah, a Frosty.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of a lateral move from institutional prison food. Like, it was as cheap and as low and as and by the way, also unrecognizable. Like, here's a hot dog I've never tasted before. Here's a pizza in the shape of a stop sign. Like, here's a bunch of shit that doesn't compute, but I've had Shakey's Pizza, and I've had Carney's hot dogs, and I've had Carl's Jr., I've had all that on the outside, but once you got to the inside, it'd almost be like if movie theaters made their own candy.
Yeah, it would. I went to many games growing up at Candlestick Park, right, in San Francisco, and I remember the 100% of the malts I had growing up were inside of the stadium. Never had a malt outside. Right. No reason to have a malt. There was
with a wooden spoon.
Yeah.
Yes. And it wasn't even really a malt as you know it. It was a frozen block in a cup with a wooden spoon that snapped pretty quickly. Still wildly satisfying.
It was like frozen hot cocoa.
Yes.
Right.
A malted.
Right.
Sort of. Yeah.
Right. And so we could only afford to shop at Sears or JCPenney's. So because we could only afford to shop at Sears or JCPenney's, then you couldn't buy Levi's. In order to buy Levi's, you had to go to some hoity-toity place called Miller's Outpost, which was, 3 blocks away.
Sure.
And had cowboys as mascots. By the way, Jimmy Kimmel's first job working at a Miller's Outpost in Vegas, like folding pants. But the point is at some point, stadiums went, well, what if we had Carl's Jr.? Or what if we had In-N-Out Burger? And what if we had Wolfgang Puck? And at some point, Sears went, well, what if we sold Levi's? Would it be the end of the world? And now, not that Sears is around anymore, but you can. So the pecking order would be super denim bottom, Levi's top, and probably Toughskins in the middle. Also, it was difficult back then because every kid now, like, is just wearing board shorts and flip-flops and T-shirts. Like, my friends' kids are pretty affluent. Their families are pretty affluent, and they all just show up in cutoffs and flip-flops and some T-shirt with some cool surfboard name on it from the 60s. And no one knows the difference. When you were wearing imitation Wallabies or imitation Earth shoes or imitation Levi's or, you had your Izod shirt with a platypus on it, everyone knew you were poor. We knew you were buying the generic version of the good stuff that everyone wanted.
In my era, it was the shoes. If you were wearing Keds, that was a dead giveaway. Didn't have Nikes, didn't have Reeboks.
Kids.
Right. And every once in a while, there's that weird thing you'd see, like if you ever go to Tijuana and you want to buy a leather bomber jacket that has the Pittsburgh Steeler insignia on it, except for Pittsburgh spelled incorrectly. And you see, like, there was like that Nike with 4 stripes on it. Like, they're little
Adidas.
things. Yeah. Here was the conceit. If you go to school with a bunch of drunk 13-year-olds, you could probably pass this off. But if it's daylight and they're sober, they're going to know you're a loser.
Kids are pretty finely attuned radars for that kind of stuff, middle school and whatever.
But like you said, with the Prius now, everybody's undercover.
Everyone's just look,
doesn't matter now.
Mark Cuban's wearing a Mavericks t-shirt, board shorts, cargo shorts, and driving a Prius. What's the difference between a guy who makes $41,000 a year working for the city and him? I had Max Zapata, just because we were drilling down on this the other day, which was I'm always interested in how much effort it takes to be poor, and then how it's more of a mindset and a mentality. And I was talking to you guys about driving by my dad's old house that was all overgrown in the valley, and I took Sonny there for a bit of a scared straight journey with the dirt driveway and dirt alley, and it was an eyesore, depressing, and a mess. And as it gets hot, and it is hot out there now,
Triple digits.
Max Zapata's running around the next room. Max Zapata, come this way. Talk to whomever about something else. But where we were talking about the mobile swamp cooler, and Gary was looking for some of that.
I have that.
And I realized at some point when we were living in this box, this sweat box in the valley that was built probably in the 20s, A-frame, 600 square foot house with no insulation. There's just open beams, and you could see the wood and the roofing, the tar paper was just over the top of it. And it was just no insulation in the walls, no radiant barrier, no, ducting, fans, ventilation, no nothing. Just a box, just like a hot box, like just a flat, like living in a garage. And during the summer, it was brutally hot inside that place. So at some point, my dad broke down and he got a swamp cooler, but not a swamp cooler that you'd put on your roof, but like a mobile swamp cooler. It had casters on it. You'd push it around. I told Gary to find one like from basically something you would find in the Sears catalog.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, it looks like a hi-fi.
Sears, it was like Sears catalog circa 1975. And the thing's about 24 wide and 24 deep, stands about 28 or 30 inches high, and you just roll it around. If you're sitting on the sofa, you just roll it up next to you. Also, there's a handle at the bottom with a drawer, and the drawer had a tray. It just kind of opened like a glove box, just opened out, and you'd fill it with water, and if you're really feeling good about yourself, you'd throw some ice cubes in there, and then you'd shut it up, and then you'd turn it on, and then you just get hit with this wind that just ran across the water. But it wasn't cold air. The air...
It was moist air.
Yes, none of the air was changing in this sweat box. And of course, the bowels of the valley, dog days of summer, it was 111 degrees outside. It'd be 96 degrees inside the house. And when you turn the swamp cooler on, it was better than not having it on, but it wasn't cooling any of the air in the house. And my loft, of course, was at the top. So all the heat was like crawling. It was like sleeping in the attic during the summertime with no air in the house. And what I was thinking about, and I went back and looked at it, my dad at some point got himself a Sears charge card, and there was a Sears in the neighborhood, and he was going over there to use his Sears charge card. And what I realized is a window-mounted unit, which I did the research on back in the day, retailed for anywhere between $109 and $239 for the deluxe job. So let's just say he could have got $125. He could have got the cheap window mount air conditioning unit. Well, I lived in houses with those in it. They're pretty effective. If you just leave them on, they'll cool the area. And
especially a 600 square foot area.
The fucking house was like 17 by 16. Like, it would have worked. And we had a window right in the front. Like, it would have worked. But I'll guarantee that worthless piece of shit, loud hunk of junk swamp cooler was $71. And my dad wouldn't squeeze the trigger. He had this mobile piece of shit that you would have to constantly refill with water, and you'd roll it over here, and you'd roll it. Obviously, it did nothing to cool the house. So when I'd go up in the attic at night, it was still burning up in there. The window-mounted unit would have worked nicely, could have turned it on and just kind of left it on through the night and stuff. It would have really cooled the air in the room, but I'll guarantee it was 25% more. And for that reason, my dad went with the hunk of junk that didn't work at all.
Yeah, there's a philosophical question I ask myself when it comes to a trivial amount of money, whether it's $20 or $60. Well, let's say I often ask myself this when it's the difference between riding coach or like the premium economy. Like for an extra $40, you can say, and I think to myself, if I'm in hour 4 of this flight, would I pay $40 for a little extra leg room? Yeah, I probably would. So there you go, worth it. $40 isn't pleasant to spend if you don't want to, but if you think about it like that, like, if I'm in the worst situation, I'm boiling hot with the swamp cooler that doesn't work, would I pay $40 to be cool? Yeah, I would.
Yeah, and I get the argument sometimes that people do with meals because they're great, but then they're gone, or even a flight. They're great, but then they're gone. But to have a cool dwelling to live in for year upon year versus rolling around this loud. You couldn't even hear the TV set. Like, you have to put it right up against you. It was a lot of busting the ice trays open and filling up. But I thought that is a poor person's mentality. That's how poor people think. You start off with the basic premise, I'm not worth it. And then you move
and then
ahead.
You go down from there.
And then you go down from there. All right, let's see. I got a couple of calls up there. I heard today that the LAUSD was not opening at all.
That is correct.
Oh, man. Sonny came with me today. Should we put him on the mic and see just how committed to excellence this kid is?
Are you part of LAUSD?
I don't know.
I hope not.
I think kids are very safe, but we shall find out. Matt's over here in Studio City and wants to discuss the drop program. Matt, 36, Studio City.
Hey, Ace Man. How's the gang doing today?
Good.
Hi.
Yeah, I just want to talk. Everyone's talking about defunding the police, and it's kind of a contentious subject. I know you're aware of the drop program, but maybe a lot of listeners aren't. I think it's a good starting point for people to kind of talk about the police budget and where we spend a lot of money.
Well, the drop program is something we covered on the show many years ago, which is policemen retiring. Also, you got to think about it. You know, when we think about police, we think about firemen, we think about school teachers or other public people at road crews and things like that. You know, as I've said, I think we're all glad they're there. And I think we all think of them as noble and good and all that stuff. But it is weird when I'm 50 at the time, when I'm like 52, and I feel like when I was 52, I'm 56 now. Like, I'm right in the middle of work. I got to work for another 20 years. Like, I don't have any thoughts about not working. You know, I feel like I wouldn't deserve to stay home. And I'm like talking to the fireman guy who's been a fireman since he was 22. And he's like, yeah, next year I have 30 years in, so I can retire and get 3/4 benefit for the rest of my life, or I can go 35 years in and retire at full benefits, full medical for the rest of life. And I thought, well, how many of us have the opportunity to retire in our early 50s and just full freight for the rest of your life and full medical for the rest of your life? And then the cops were like, Well, it's part of the reason why a lot of these cities are broke. It's like we offered way too much, and now the tab has come in on our bar tab. But the drop thing was like cops retire, get their full benefits when they retire, and then get rehired at full pay as well. So now you're getting full benefits, and you're getting a full salary as well. And again, what other facet of life works this way? I mean, we're in the private sector, and then you got to be careful about the people who benefit from the rules making the rules. But you tell me more, Matt.
Well, secondly, first of all, it also applies to the LA Fire Department, so they're in the drop program as well. I think the latest I read about it in January of this year, or maybe it was last year, I can't quite remember, the city council voted to change the drop program, but if you're already in it, you're grandfathered in. I think the new thing is if you have to work X amount of time while you're on it, and if you're not, you lose the early pension payments, but you still get your salary.
But I mean, there's guys, there's like retired firemen, they're making $250,000 a year and stuff like that. I mean, it's real money. Like real.
And can you imagine moving to Indiana with $200,000 a year for the rest of your life?
Yeah,
King.
You'd be like the villain in Roadhouse, the richest guy in a small town.
That's right. I like
Just
that
like
guy.
it.
Yeah.
I thought the drop program was designed. I thought it was, first of all, specifically designed for firefighters to keep them from retiring. So I guess that's been kind of muddied along the way.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be cost neutral, but it turned out costing us, I don't know, over $1 billion.
Yeah, I know. Well, we always start
Carry
off.
the one.
No one, rarely do politicians put legislation forward and preface it with, boy, you guys going to be ass raped on this one. They usually go, sorry, Sonny. They usually go, this isn't going to cost the taxpayers a penny. This is going to be neutral. This is going to be a cost benefit.
And they make money.
Right. And then it turns in the world-class reaming. That's Rom. Thanks, Thank you, Matt. Chris, 50, Sacramento, is a school teacher. Listen up, Sonny. Sonny, are you part of LA Unified School District?
No, I'm in Sacramento.
Sorry, I'm talking to my boy. So.
I don't.
You don't know?
I don't
Good.
think so.
Yeah.
I think you're La Cañada School District.
Yeah, I'm a student. That I don't know if I'm part of it.
Oh boy,
You really,
that's worse than I thought.
call yourself a student?
Well, yeah.
I think you're more as an inmate.
Question mark.
Just passing through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not letting the time do him. Hey, Chris, are you a teacher?
I was a teacher for 12 years, and then I was a vice principal for 13 years.
Ooh.
And were you working in the Sacramento area?
Yeah, I was in the Sacramento area. I'm now retired due to a brain condition similar to Brian's. But other than that, I have some insight on how things were in the early 90s when you were a teacher. If a kid was really out of control, the kids would get punished. You call the parents would see what they could do. The situation now, as you have mentioned many times, is that the kids are coming from these broken households where the divorced parent has no choice but to be the best friend of their kid, or they're going to lose them. Because the kids will say, I'm not giving you my phone. And I go, well, I'm going to call your mom. And they go, no, my mom's on my side. Because if I tell my mom I'm going to go live with dad in a city in different place, she's not going to fight. And I go, oh, you're right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now it becomes kind of a popularity contest. So if the kid's 11 or 13 and dad lets them stay up till midnight and doesn't make them do their homework and gives them a phone and lets them eat Fruity Pebbles for breakfast, then he wins the popularity contest doing all the things that are horrible for the kid, and then the kid's going to move in with dad.
Sonny, remember that
That's
strategy.
exactly it.
Yeah, remember that. Right.
So when I first started teaching, I taught a general ed class, and I would have the kids introduce themselves by saying, who do you live with? Do you live with your real parents, step-parents, or who it was? About 68% of the kids in that class were something other than real parents. Then I taught an English language learning class where the kids are coming from other countries. There's a lot of Russian kids, some like Hmong and Asian, and that one, 80% of those kids were living in situations where it's the same parents.
Right.
And you can only guess who did their homework.
Right. Yeah. Well, you did. You just spat out some good data.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, I've said a million times, how is it the school system should work if the home situation is not working? And I bring it up once a year, but I was thinking about it because I grew up in this petri dish called North Hollywood High in the 80s, and I was seeing yesterday like Jewish Lives Matter or hashtag Jewish. It was trending. And I was thinking about my grandfather, Laszlo Gorog, and I was thinking about these Jewish kids who I always kind of looked up to. I looked up to their family, and I thought, look, I grew up, I had, my white friends, Ray and Chris. Their parents were divorced. They lived in apartments. Chris's dad went to jail. Chris ended up going to prison. Later on in life, it was chaos, and nobody went to college, and it was just a mess. It was nobody, the kids were running wild. They were ditching school all the time. Chris and Ray both, it's funny. Chris, Ray, and me all could have got college scholarships to play play football in college. None of the three of us ended up going to college. We all just cleaned carpets right out of high school and then ended up on a construction site. And Chris and Ray are still on a construction site.
Well, and you didn't even know how to go to college.
No, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fill out the paperwork. And then there were the Latin kids, and then there were the black kids, many who were bussed in from the inner city. They just kind of went back to the inner city. The Latin kids kind of went to work for their dads, stacking cinder blocks. It was always funny. I had one very white friend, redheaded friend, super white guy named Zeb. His family was all broken up and they lived in apartments too. I had my one black friend, Tom. His parents were together and they were rich and successful. And he went off to UCLA. And then there were the Jewish kids, all the Jewish kids who lived up in the hills. They had all the Alex Arados and Robbie Levines and Nate Wittenberg and Jeff Buck and all these guys. And their families were all together, and they all were like taking the SATs, and they were prepping. And as soon as June 1982 came about and everyone left North Hollywood High, all of the Jewish kids headed to college, and all of my white buddies headed to clean carpets for A&B Carpets, and then eventually onto a construction site. And the Mexican guys went back to Pacoima and worked with their dads, and the black guys went back to the inner city and God knows what. Now, we all attended the same school at the same time with the same principal, the same teacher, same faculty. Everything was the same, but there was one thing that was different: the family. The family. Why? My experience at North Hollywood High was vastly different than Robbie Levine and Alex Arados. Alex Arado went to UC Berkeley and is now an attorney. That's what he did. When he went to Berkeley, I went to Silver Lake and started pulling ivy off the side of an apartment building. But it wasn't North Hollywood High that did that. Mm-hmm. We're all in the same place. It's like we're all drinking out of the same well. How can you blame the water? It's
okay,
only
now here's what's going to happen.
Yes.
They are going to modify the schedule where the kids are going to go to school maybe 2 of the days. And I'm telling you right now, these kids that are coming from the broken homes are not going to do any work at all. They're going to be home. Parents are going to be off trying to get their jobs back going on, and they're going to be saying to their kid, "How are things going?" And they're like, "Well, I go Thursday. I'm supposed to have the project done. I didn't do it. I think I'm sick Thursday. I'm not going to make it." They're going to see a huge amount of these kids coming from these middle areas whose parents are their best friends, just simply not doing any work. And they're going to be saying, "Well, where's our credit? Yeah. Are we going on? Where is it?" Well, and they're going to say, "Your kid didn't do work." Well, that's because he was sick.
Well, first you should know, because I am a responsible parent who cares about his child's education. Sonny, not only are you not my best friend, you haven't cracked my top 25.
Is that why you're always in love with that Cracker Jack Papa Wheelie kid?
There's a kid in the neighborhood who rides wheelies on a mountain bike, and I don't mean Papa Wheelie. I mean rides wheelies.
Wow.
This kid goes all the way down foothill, crossed up on his Specialized, all the way down foothill, like through signals.
Right there.
That kid is a winner, man.
Oh, his dad must be so lucky.
Oh my God, but I would trade 1,000, Sonny, for just that one kid. That kid's a winner, man.
It's Natalia's best friend's older brother.
Well, put a word in for me.
And his older brother works for Nate.
Oh, right. Was over there. Well, I'm going to go talk to him.
So we have some relationship with that kid.
Like, Sonny can do a Papa Wheelie, but you couldn't even get a playing card between the tire and the ground. Like, it isn't, there's no daylight there. This kid rides a Papa Wheelie, man.
I can get up for like a second.
Yeah, but did you see that kid? That kid went 5 city blocks, man. We were walking home from the Mexican restaurant, and that kid went by full wheelie mode.
Wow.
I was like, wow, that kid's a winner.
Single tear down your cheek.
You were so obvious about it. It was like 10:30 at night. We're walking home, and the kid's like on the side, like jumping, waiting for the crossing, and you're like, woo, yeah, like pointing to him, like Papa Wheelie kid, yeah.
I may have had a couple margaritas, but either way, what he did was impressive.
In vino veritas.
That's right.
So Adam, are you going to make some calls for that kid to get him in the carpet cleaning early?
Oh, God.
No, that kid's a winner.
Get him in right now. Say you know people, and I'll get you in the carpet cleaning industry. You ride that wheelie sweet.
I'll ride that wheelie right into a colony kitchen in Ventura.
Right in the back of the van.
Well, thanks. Hey, Chris, what's going on with you have a brain tumor?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have what's called an AVM. And so I have seizures, and so I'm fine until I'm on the ground.
Oh.
And then I'm in the back of an ambulance wondering how in the world this strange man knows my name. Because he
don't be a one-upper, like I said before.
Wow.
And saying, Chris, are you okay? Chris, what we're going to do now? And I'm looking at the guy and thinking, who are you? What are you doing? And I'm trying to figure out where I am. And then it dawns on me as I'm seeing all the small compartments in the back of the ambulance shaking and trembling. And I figure I'm in a small plane and I'm island hopping, and me and my gay lover are going from Jamaica to San Marcos.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And just let me go back to sleep.
Like me and that Papa Wheelie kid are going to do in a few months.
That's right. And then when they get me some oxygen, I realize I'm not gay and that we have to get the plane turned around, and I might even be married. This is going to be a problem.
That's complicated.
Well, thanks, Chris. All right, so your school schedule, Sonny, as you know it, is what again?
Okay, so you either go on Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday, and you only stay till 1. And the days that you're not there, you're doing work online. But it's not a Zoom call. It's the teachers just crank out work, or they pre-record a lecture.
How fast can you get your work done from home?
Last year I could do it for maybe 2 hours, an hour and a half.
Are you a freshman this year, Sonny?
Yeah.
Oh, congrats. You have summer reading now?
I hope not.
You know by now.
He's been reading the back of his eyelids, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
What? I've been working for 6 hours a day. How is that? How's that reading the back of my eyelids?
We've talked about that, Sonny. Don't worry.
We talked about you working, and we're proud of you.
And you still owe me like $300 from my paycheck and that bet we made.
LAUSD, second largest school district in the nation.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
Sure.
I have a question for Sonny about this.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing because you're not there.
Mm-hmm.
But if I got this news, I'd be like, yes, like this is a gift from heaven. But also, are you kind of bummed? I mean, first day of school, freshman, you walk into that high school, or I don't know how it works if you're still in middle school or not, but you're either, the top dog in middle school, or you're going to a brand new school and it's really exciting. Do you feel cheated, or do you feel like this is a gift?
I mean, I feel like it's a gift for 2 reasons. Is because my middle school and my high school are on the same campus, so I would just be going from one building to another. And B, I'm probably not going to be there on the first day of school. because of Monterey every year.
Yeah.
Oh, you think Monterey's happening?
We're going to Monterey.
Maybe.
We're doing a race.
But you're going to Monterey anyway.
No, it's the week before. They moved it a week before. So
yeah.
Now you might be going to Alaska with Huey Lewis, but we'll figure that one out.
I mean, it's just, even if I'm there, it's probably just the teachers know this kid's not going to be here on the first day of school. So yeah, I should probably just not.
All right. Go say hi to Ted Cruz over there.
All right.
And thank you, Sonny.
What a life this kid
What's
has.
your give a plug to your podcast.
Oh, yeah. So go check out Fantasy BS or the Benchwarmers podcast. We are currently recording new episodes every week. We'll be back with Dylan shortly. So go check that out.
All right.
Hard sell.
Yeah, hard sell. All right, see ya. Punctuate, boy.
I'm sad that Sonny doesn't sound like a baby anymore.
I know.
He's getting that deep voice.
As the braces off.
I know. I miss it. All right, let me hit liquid IV. Dehydration occurs daily. In 3 out of 4 people, you can stay hydrated. It's important, man. I've been walking, and it's been hot out there, man. It is now on summer-wise. I use a liquid IV. I put it in a bottle, fill it with about 12 ounces of water, and I just shake it up. It's fast. It's effective. Stay hydrated. Each serving helps you get about as much hydration as 2 to 3 bottles of water. So if you're going on a long hike and you're doing a lot of sweating like I'm doing, and you don't want to carry a big Camelback filled with water, get your liquid IV going in there and just carry 10, 12 ounces of it. Stuff tastes good. I like the lemon myself. It's good for before you work out. It's good for after you work out. 5 essential vitamins, more vitamin C than an orange, as much potassium as a banana. No artificial flavors or preservatives, less sugar than an apple. No GMO, vegan, gluten, dairy, soy-free as well. Liquid IV, right, Dawson?
Liquid IV is available nationwide at Costco and Target, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code ADAM at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order when you use promo code ADAM at liquidiv.com. Get better hydration today at liquidiv.com, promo code ADAM.
All right, let's roll, take a quick break. We'll roll right into the news right after this.
Give me the news with Grad, news with Gina Grad, breaking viral, all those crazy Trump tweets. Give me news with Gina Grad, trouble in the Middle East, celebrity drunk meltdowns. Need news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, now we know that LAUSD, the LA Unified School District, is not to be when it comes to the fall semester. Everyone will be doing their thing from home, but it's not just school. We also, this is sort of breaking as we're recording. As far as California goes, the Governor Newsom, has rolled back the state's reopening. So Newsom is requiring all California counties to close indoor operations for the following sectors. Some of them we already knew: restaurants, wineries, movie theaters, family entertainment, zoos, museums, and card rooms. Bars must close all operations. And 30 counties in the state are monitoring closing fitness centers, churches, places of worship, offices of non-critical sectors, personal care services, hair salons, malls. So really going back to the beginning again.
I keep reading these articles that August sends me that basically we're supposed to get exposed, and the reason we're spiking and New York isn't is because they all got exposed, and now that they got their herd immunity. I don't know what you guys are hearing, but I feel like they all got hit hard at the beginning, and then they all got exposed, and now there's no movement. And
but
we
then wasn't
didn't.
there talk of getting 2 different strains, that we got the Asian strain and they got the European strain? I mean, there's so much information just because, where the flights fly in from usually. Also, at least we know one case. So this isn't like, I'm not grafting this on to all people by any means, but there was that one big article about, the headline was, man says I made a mistake. And he went to a COVID party, which was kind of, doing it in jest and everyone getting together just to see what happens, just to see if it affects you. And this guy, his last words were, I made a mistake going to that party.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
So,
by the way, that guy was 700 pounds too. Like
if he was a pound.
My thing is like, I think everyone's going to be exposed to it at some point. It's a pandemic. It's how it affects you when you're exposed and how many people are negatively affected in one time. I don't think we can avoid it. I think we got to keep it away from the folks that are in hospitals and the folks that are old and the folks that are in nursing homes. But I don't know that we're going to avoid it. I can't imagine with all we're doing, and again, half of it is like people are out, people are flying. I've flown a few times. I'm going to fly some more. How could I avoid it? I don't think I'm avoiding it. I really don't. I just think it's passing. I think it's not. I mean, it's like Bean got it, of Kevin and Bean. It affected him like the flu, but his wife had no symptoms, and she tested positive for it.
Right.
I think it's going to be a lot of them. Yes.
Well, it would be interesting if you got an antibody test or an antigen test, just to see if you've had it and
people all over the country.
You might just be one of the ones that, like you said, it passed through. But I mentioned this the other day, and I've seen some friends on Facebook going, I'm experiencing this as well. There seems to be a pattern with a lot of people of, we all know the deathly, horrific fortnight of just kill me now. And then you start to get better and you're like, oh, it's gone. And then it hits you again. So it seems to come in waves for a lot of people too.
Well, this has been going on for a while. I know Bean, who got it. And I know, I guess Brian Callen got it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of guys I know who got it, but
your friend who wrote the music for that thing you do.
Yeah, but I just knew of him. Like, I mean, it wasn't really. I wish it'd be presumptuous for me to call him a friend. I never talked to him. I just knew who he was, and I'd worked with him many, many years ago. Yeah, he died, but I'm not judging this on who gets sick or who gets flu-like symptoms. I'm going for death. And I don't know. I don't have anybody in my world. I have a few people that got it, but I don't have anyone who was really affected by it. But
and I think we're right to not focus on cases. We focus on hospitalization. We focus on death because if everybody gets it and nobody goes to the hospital, that's great news.
Yeah, I think if a bunch of 30-years get it, then that's fine. Adam Schlesinger, sorry, is the person we're thinking of. But anyway.
But there are hospital spikes in some places, and if we shut down again, people are gonna start going insane. Start.
Yes.
So
Keep
we'll
going
see.
Insane.
Yes.
Yeah, a couple of sad RIPs to start the day with. John Travolta's wife, Kelly Preston, an actress on her own, she died of breast cancer the other night. She was 57. She was memorialized in an Instagram post by Travolta. I think we have that. She fought, let me pull that up here. She fought a courageous fight with the love and support of so many. My family will, be ever grateful to the nurses and doctors at MD Anderson Cancer Center. They, I think they were married in 1991. They have a 20-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old son. Their oldest son, Jet, passed away as a teenager from a seizure. And a family rep released a statement on Sunday saying on the morning of July 12th, Kelly Preston, adored wife and mother, passed away following a 2-year battle with breast cancer, choosing to keep her fight private. She had been undergoing medical treatment for some time. So that's why this was like, huh? Who? What?
Yeah.
Because it was never in the news.
Yeah, I saw that story, and I always kind of think about this theme that I get back to, which is, well, are you lucky or are you unlucky? Because we talk a lot about luck or timing or the haves and the have-nots. Like, well, she's a beautiful young woman, so that's kind of lucky. Not everyone looks that way. You got a nice genetic hand. She meets John Travolta. He's flying her in a Qantas Airlines jet all over the world. But then you lose your 17-year-old son, which has to be devastating. I mean, there could be no more devastating news to a mom than losing your teenage son, especially if it's that Papa Wheelie kid. Sonny, are you? That kid.
Bite your tongue. Bite your tongue.
A goddamn crackerjack, man. All the way down Foothill, crossed up. He was crossed up. Anyway, you lose your son. That's devastation. And then, of course, you don't see your 60th birthday, especially when you're affluent. You have all the money anyone could all the money science could buy, and you still can't buy your way treatment-wise out of it. And so, Kelly Preston, well, lucky or unlucky? I mean, a great live cut. I mean, many women live another 30 years, and in an affluence, you know what I mean, with everything you wanted. And then you, unfortunately, were alive when your teenage son passed. So it's like, and the answer is both, right?
Yeah.
That's the
like
answer.
most people, it's nuanced, it's a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's not worth sitting around and looking at what other people are doing and trying to figure out what they have versus what you don't have, or who's blessed or who's lucky or who's whatever. It's everyone's experience is different, and you should make yours different and not focus on everyone else's. Sorry.
Well, and to that point, just to get through the really morbid stuff, Naya Rivera, TMZ, and by now other outlets report that her body has been recovered. She was the actress Santoya Lopez from Glee, the cheerleader. She was 33, and she went missing about a week ago while boating with her 4-year-old son on Lake Piru. The body the reports are has been recovered, and the family's been notified. Her son found unharmed in the rented boat when she disappeared. The son said that his mom had gone for a swim and didn't come back. And divers have been using sonar and drones and dogs that can sniff gases through the water.
Where was this? This is in a lake, right?
Lake Piru. Yeah.
Fuck is that?
It's north of here.
I think me and Jimmy for the Man Show may have filmed fishing with the fridge. There where we went out fishing with the refrigerator Perry.
Perry?
Yeah, we don't air that anymore because Jimmy was playing refrigerator Perry in that bit. So,
unearthed.
Yeah,
resurfaced.
Newly unearthed. Yes.
Apparently, this river, this lake in particular, it's not uncommon to have a drowning death there. And
look, I don't want to be this guy, but I saw some of her posts and some of her pictures and stuff, and it seemed like she was struggling with something a little mentally. Like it just seemed like there was something going on with her, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, what was she doing out there? Why did she go in? How come she wasn't wearing a life jacket? Why? It seems pretty weird to leave your kid in the boat and then just go in without a life jacket. I wonder if there was some potential suicide thoughts out there. And also, like, I don't know, like she didn't seem like an avid fisherman or something. Like it seemed like kind of a weird activity. I don't know why you'd want to include your kid. I don't know.
But I don't know if you saw any of the security footage of just them, parking, getting out of the car, walking up the ramp. And like they have their floaties and they have their gear. And it just looks like any day at the lake. It doesn't, you can't tell, obviously, from security footage. But, apparently there's a ton of full-sized trees under that water and like debris and just limbs. And so a lot of people don't get discovered there because you just get entangled in all the shit under that water.
Yeah. It turns out not that much good happens in a lake, and ponds are even worse. So I don't know.
Bogs are the bottom.
Bogs are the bottom, man. Yeah. All right. Hey, Max Pata, what spot do I have here? I got some cross information in front of me.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was reading the wrong thing.
Could keep going. Let me hit Dodge here. Yeah, summer. Best time to join the Brotherhood of Muscle. Dodge. Power dollars here, baby. $10 off based on the total horsepower of your new Dodge. So every 2020 Dodge Challenger, Durango, and Charger. Enjoy the sweet sounds of a Dodge Charger SRT Scat Pack, 485 horsepower. So you got 485 horsepower, which is plenty, and you get $4,850 off. See, $10 per horsepower. You're doing the math. And summer power dollars are back on the Dodge Durango. Performance-driven SUV makes summer trips a breeze. Fit everyone with the Durango 7-passenger seating capacity. Get more power. Get more off. It's simple. Hurry to your local Dodge dealer now. Take advantage of the Dodge Power Dollars deal. All right, Gina, what else we got?
Yeah, let's switch gears. For the first time, a female soldier has graduated from the Army's elite Special Forces course and will join one of the all-male Green Beret teams.
First time?
Yeah, unidentified woman is one of 3 female soldiers who have been going through the Army Special Forces qualification course at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. She graduated Thursday, donned her Green Beret along with about 400 others. The Army does not release the identities of its commandos or disclose to which Special Forces group they will be assigned. The more than 6,700 Army Green Berets are highly trained commandos who usually work in 12-person teams, and they're often used for specialized combat and counterterrorism operations to train other nations' forces in battle skills.
Well, between this and the hot Brazilian chick on Sports Illustrated, I've really turned the corner on women entering a man's world or men entering a woman's world. My compass is spinning around like I'm in the Devil's Triangle, man.
I don't know what to believe.
I don't know what to believe anymore.
But I mean, and this is not a case of, oh, well, they must have lowered expectations. Like, no, it's tough. That's why she's the first one.
Yeah, you can tweak some things around for maybe being a fireman or something, although I would argue that's probably not a good idea either. Either you can do 10 chin-ups or you can't. I mean, do you want the fire person? It's like, well, they can do 3 chin-ups, but she's a woman, so she's coming to your house. But in the Green Berets, you can't mess around because you got a platoon and people die. So, and by the way, don't we all like this world where you go, here's the deal. You have to put on a 60-pound sack, a backpack, and you have to do a mile run in under 6.5 minutes, and that's it. It doesn't matter if you're short or tall or black or white or female. Those are the rules. And now, knowing that when you do become a Green Beret, now you have all our respect.
Oh, yeah.
Versus like, well, did you do girls push-ups when you're on your knees, when you're doing the push-up challenge? Like, once that starts entering in, then you start going, it undermines the achievement. So good for her. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little chess news. In a way, a chess champ's YouTube podcast was taken down recently, allegedly because of references that are chess references to things like black against white, white always wins, things like that. TheSun.com says
that drop.
A series was removed because it contained harmful and dangerous content. And this Croatian chess player and podcast host, Antonio Rodic's chess channel has over 700,000 subscribers, 275 million hits on YouTube. His fans apparently just love his analysis of the games. And he was assessing a match played by Hikaru Nakamura, a Japanese-born American chess grandmaster. And this guy who takes
master, I find master problematic.
Yeah. Grandmaster, Grand Wizard, short jump. He takes on these players around the world, believes his latest podcast was removed by an algorithm that picks out these key words. He says there's talk of racism, and the YouTube algorithm could have heard black goes to B6 instead of C6, white will always be better. So maybe with the current situation in the world, if you hear something like white will always be better, it might flag this video as inappropriate, harmful, or dangerous and take it down. And the host said it's a shame because he doesn't swear on the videos. He's just a chess guy, and he appealed and the video was reinstated. But the algorithm may have to be adjusted.
What was that Jodie Foster searching for? It wasn't Bobby Fischer, but there was a Jodie Foster, young black chess guy movie.
Oh, was it Jodie Foster?
Had a name.
Oh, wait.
Little Man Tate.
Little Man Tate.
But he wasn't chess. He was just a genius.
Oh, he wasn't a chess guy.
Brian, if he's a genius, he plays chess.
I think Diane Wiest came in and took him to a school for the gifted, but all he wanted to do was be like an ordinary kid. And his mom, Jodie Foster, was like a waitress, a cocktail waitress. He was a very meager origins.
Oh, maybe
I saw it once in the theater in 1990.
Maybe there was something in the trailer where he was beating someone in chess or something.
I think that's
And maybe I thought that's what he was doing.
You know what's really cool? When sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is kind of the slippery slope of all this sort of race-based everything. It's just sort of finding everything and weeding it all out and saying, no more saying peanut gallery and no more no more saying cakewalk and half this stuff. You're like, what? What does that even mean? Oh, it pertains to.
Refers to, yeah.
Right. And so everything refers to something. My point is if no one knows what that is, then can we keep moving along here? But anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when I lived in New York, something that was very fascinating and almost sport-like was fucking awesome to watch. In the park, a lot of people play speed chess.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, if you're learning chess, don't bother because it goes so fast and you hit the button and people just play for But they're but the thing about it is, and yes, maybe they're all nerds, every walk of life, every age group, old black men, young ladies.
Old nerds, black nerds.
It's cool that that part of the culture, at least it was, in New York, is to sit around and wait at a table and somebody will join you for speed chess.
That was a trope in New York 90s movies where it had the old black guy sitting at the table in the background.
Because it exists. It was cool.
Well, you guys, I just want to, sorry, go ahead, Gina. Let's do one more.
All right, let's find something good here. Oh, perfect. A McDonald's customer in England has been arrested after he allegedly bit a seagull for a very good reason, because the seagull tried to steal his food. The suspect reportedly attacked the bird in front of a bunch of cops that were also eating. So the man claims that the bird was trying to steal his McDonald's. So he grabbed it and he bit it and he threw it on the ground. And the animal apparently appeared to be injured because of the bite, but it did fly away. But he was seen by the cops and admitted to being under the influence of drugs.
Isn't seagull the ballsiest of all the birds, right?
100%.
Brazen.
Brazen.
Yes. Whole bag of Cheetos and just takes it into the wind like it was never there.
Right.
At the beach, always.
They don't really care if you get up and walk around or walk toward them. They are the sort of ultimate example of what happens to wild animals when they interact with humans too much and then lose whatever that
comfortable.
Lose their fear.
Lose that fear. And then and also it's got to be, if you're a bird and there's French fries laying around, I mean that's the siren song.
That's go time.
I love French fries, and I don't even have a beak. But if I had a beak, I would really love French fries even more. I don't know. There's something about a beak that just says, "Eat me." I don't know, hot dogs, hamburgers, French fries, made for a beak.
Made for being made off with.
Yes, absconding with. Yes, grabbing one, taking off, and then eating it on the fly. But do they only eat it when they're flying? And then wouldn't that be like you only eating when you were running? And then wouldn't that be uncomfortable?
Yeah.
But you would never get fat. You know what I mean?
Benny of the bird world.
Yes, imagine if you could.
Benny Torter Pigeon.
Imagine if you could only eat when you were running. When Ted Cruz comes in here, remind me to talk to him about something that's driving me nuts, which is these godforsaken freeway signs. I talk about it's always click it or ticket, and it goes from click it or ticket, and now it goes to wear a mask or social distance, but it's always a big handful of nothing. I've been walking around my neighborhood a lot lately, just taking hikes. And I'll give you a perfect example. There's walking down Foothill where the kid rides the Papa Wheelie, and there's the on-ramp for the freeway. And I'm walking down the street, and I'd like to cross the street. I'd like to cross where the on-ramp is for the freeway. All the cars that are coming at me at a decent speed, I don't know if they're going to turn up the on-ramp or they're going to go straight and go past me because nobody ever signals. So I start walking. Now, if they would signal, I wouldn't start walking across the crosswalk where the on-ramp is, but they never signal. And then half of them turn up and the other goes straight. But I never know as I'm walking across, should I stop and wait? And then I realized nobody signals. And then I realized it could so easily be remedied if they put it up on those signs.
If only there was someone to send a signal to the people on the street.
You're going to make this Ted Cruz mission?
Yes. Just imagine the semi-utopia we'd be living in if everyone could just signal the next day. Wouldn't cost. We wouldn't have to build any more roads. Wouldn't cost any money. Wouldn't be anything. Just an informational campaign. Just the same stupid sign that says "click it or ticket" that everyone ignores. Just use your signal. Just up it. Yeah. Just get used to it.
Increase efficiency immediately.
Right, because every time I'm walking, I stop and I see cars coming toward me, and most of them are turning up the ramp, but I'll never know because they never signal. And then there's also the other one where they don't signal, they're turning left, and you're facing them and they're facing you, and it's like you want to go, but you're not sure. Are they going straight or are they turning, but they won't? Who are these people who don't signal? Why? It feels like 75% of people will not signal. What is that? How could we correct that? And what do you guys think?
All things lead to narcissism.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
They don't care if you notice.
It's always my opinion. People are out of it. They're in their cars. They got their phones playing whatever podcast. They got so many things going on. This should be the first thing to think of. Is the last thing to think of.
But
involve them.
But think how many accidents it would avoid on the freeway if people were signaling. And when you're traveling under a sign that says "click it or ticket," your seatbelt's already on or it's off, but you're not going to do anything. If it said signal, that might be something you do in the next 100 feet. Like that's real time now. All right, let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina Grad.
That was the news with Gina Grad.
Last but not least, Tommy John, the secret to staying sweat-free this summer. Tommy John, I'm wearing mine right now. They're ready for all the summer can bring, man. Ultra breathable underwear and bras. Cool cotton underwear for men and for women. It's like having your own on-body AC unit pumping, man. Not my dad's swamp cooler, but a real AC unit. Made from premium natural Pima cotton and enhanced airflow. Evaporates sweat super fast. Lounge pants, lazy day joggers, soft Zoom-ready tees and polos. It's all I wear, and it's just the best. And you can work up a sweat, and then it'll just dry right on you. It's that efficient. Upgrade to Tommy John today with enhanced, super breathable designs. Best pair you'll ever wear, or it's free. Guaranteed. No adjustment needed, right, Dawson?
For a limited time, go to TommyJohn.com/AD/Adam and get 20% off site-wide. That's TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off site-wide. TommyJohn.com/Adam. See site for details.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll say adieu to Gina and Bald. Talk to Senator Ted Cruz right after this.
The Adam Carolla Show presents Ted Cruz's birthday cocktail party for December 22nd. Let's see who shows up. Pop singer Megan Trainor, actor Ralph Fiennes, comedian Anthony Jeselnik, legendary newscaster Diane Sawyer, and American Idol Jordan Sparks. Enjoy your party, Ted. Now back to the Adam Carolla Show.
I give it a 4.5. Had some better cocktail parties on this show. Ted Cruz is here, Texas Senator, of course. Verdict with Ted Cruz. New episodes every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. Michael Knowles also does a great job collaborating with Ted on the show. I watched a bunch of episodes last night. Good to see you.
Adam, good to see you. Last time we talked, it was on the phone, so it's good to be in person.
Yeah. Boy, a lot going on since the last time we saw you in 2015 on the phone, or at least spoke 2015 on the phone. I'm impressed of what a scholar you are of the law. That was something I was not aware of. I do a show with Mark Garrigus, and I think you guys would be impressed by one another about your scholarship of the law, if that's the proper term.
Well, it's what I did before politics, and so my career was litigating in front of the Supreme Court, and frankly, it's been a lifelong passion. I mean, when I was a kid in high school, I grew up in Houston, and got involved with a group called the Free Enterprise Institute, where they had students study free market economics and study the Constitution, and it became a lifelong passion, the Constitution and Bill of Rights. And so I have been fortunate. I had the chance to clerk on the Supreme Court for Chief Justice Rehnquist, and I argued cases before the Supreme Court. And defending the Bill of Rights has been, frankly, what I wanted to do since I was a teenager.
What is your take on what's going on in the country as we speak? It's always, I grew up around a hippie mom.
Yeah.
For back when hippie was sort of quaint.
Did you grow up here? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up here. And and my grandmother was sort of that way too. My grandmother was like in the Communist Party and stuff like that. And it started to dawn on me, when I was 9, that it wasn't so much that they loved a certain lifestyle. It's that they really didn't like this country. And they would always say, I love this country, that's why. And then they'd say something horrible about this country, about how much we need to do better and so on and so forth. And it really ultimately, from a psychological standpoint, struck me that they didn't like their dads. And that because they didn't like their dad, this country sort of became the man and their dad, and the people that are pushing back against, they're pushing back against a patriarchy and the man and their dad are now just sort of pushing back against the country. And people like me, I think, are trying to make sense of it. Like, come on, this is the best country in the world. What's the problem? And they're like, well, and they keep talking about, I love this country, but I want to fix these things. But it's starting to smell to me like they don't like the country or their dad or both.
And if you notice, they don't say, I love this country anymore.
So they used to do that.
They used to. And that, look, it's good for all of us to fight to make things better. That's the journey of life and the journey of our country. But you look at the riots we're seeing, you look at the people, the people attacking statues, for example, started out with Confederate statues. Okay, you can understand that. We have a debate about Confederate statutes and who should be commemorated, who shouldn't. I think we shouldn't be erasing history, but reasonable people can disagree on that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you saw people attacking statues of George Washington, attacking Thomas Jefferson, attacking James Madison, attacking Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant, which last I checked, they weren't exactly Confederates. And it's. I do think, and in fact, we saw a statue of Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist, defaced. And that is no longer someone speaking out against slavery or racism. That's just people that hate America, that are just trying to tear down everything that built this country. And I think that's a dangerous instinct.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out sort of where it comes from. And I remember as a poor student in the 10th grade or in the 9th grade, and I used to have these fantasies about like the school catching on fire and burning all the records. Essentially,
it's like Heather's blowing up the high school.
Right, like Heather's. Like I got a 1.7 GPA. I would like the Hall of Records burnt down. The kids that got the 4.0s don't want it that way. And I'm starting to realize maybe there's more people that have horrible GPAs like me who would just kind of want it burnt down. Like they just want to shake it like an Etch-a-Sketch and start from new.
Well, and there's a variety of different people engaged. There are some people that are explicit Marxists that want to see the government torn down. There are others, some of these mobs, they don't know anything about American history. If you're defacing Frederick Douglass, you don't know anything about the incredible journey towards civil rights that our nation is engaged in. And if you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, he made an explicit appeal, not that our nation was fundamentally corrupt and wrong. What he said is we can do better. We need to protect civil rights. And he spoke out against grotesque discrimination, but his pitch was the principles America was founded upon are principles of equality, they're principles of justice, and we can do a better job meeting them. That's a very different pitch than the people today that are saying George Washington can't be acknowledged or Thomas Jefferson can't be acknowledged. There's a lot more ignorance behind the modern attack.
Well, I'm going to pitch you an analogy, and you tell me if you think it's apt or not, which is we're hearing a lot that, well, no one's for communism and no one's really for socialism. But what we'd like is a version of it that works, you know. And I've always said this analogy. I've been to Jay Leno's garage a million times. It's 4 miles from here. And one of the
Who's got a better collection, you or Jay?
He does, but I do own 13 Paul Newman race cars now. So that I got the nod in the Paul Newman, the Cool Hand Luke department. And when we're done, if you want to see them, they're half a block from here. So he has his Chrysler Turbine Car, and it's one-off. The Chrysler made a handful of them. They discontinued them. I think they crushed them. Maybe there's one or two on the planet. Jay has one of them. It looks like the future. It's like from 1961. It makes a great turbine jet engine sound. It'll run off Chanel No. 5 or kerosene. And it's like, oh, this is the future. And he also has Model A's and Model T's, old Fords, you know, from 1919, and they look like the past. The problem with the turbine engine, it doesn't work. It seems great. It seems like the future. It seems like it has so much promise. It never worked, and Chrysler went right back to the old internal combustion engine. Same run, Henry Ford put in the Model T, and that's the one that works. And so everyone sits around and goes, but what about the future? And it's like, sorry, the one your grandpa drove, that's the one that works. Now, we can refine it, we can modify it, we can make it more efficient, and we can make it cleaner, but that's the one that works. And when I hear AOC or Bernie talking, what I hear them talking is, oh no, I got another Chrysler Turbine Car. This time it's going to work. And I'm like, why don't we use the one that's been working? What's so wrong about that?
Well, you get a lot of people like AOC, like Bernie, like college professors that live in an ivory tower. And they defend Marxism or communism or socialism, but only in the abstract. They don't actually defend any place on earth where it's been implemented.
Right.
And over and over again, it has been a train wreck. It's been a disaster. Look, my dad fought in the Cuban Revolution. When my dad was 17 years old, he was in prison. He was tortured as a teenager. Cuba went from Batista, who was a corrupt dictator, to under communism. Under Castro, it got even worse. And if you look across the world, you look at whether it's Cuba or North Korea or China or the Soviet Union, socialism and communism, and look, a lot of people don't know what socialism is. Socialism is the economic system of communism. Socialism is government ownership or control of the means of production or distribution. And, you know, you mentioned, you said your mom was in the hippie culture. There was a time back in the 60s when those on the left were, you know, hey, be free, do what you want. Now, the left is totalitarian. They want to control you. If you don't agree with them, they want you to shut up. And they want power over you. I think we ought to let people be free. And if you care about poverty, socialism doesn't work. If you want to solve poverty, there's a reason people come from all over the world to America, because America, people can start with nothing and achieve prosperity. I mean, my dad washed dishes making 50 cents an hour. That's the story of America. And you look at young people who are taught capitalism is a terrible thing. In the entire recorded history of humanity, the greatest enemy poverty has ever seen is the American free enterprise system. If you actually want people to rise out of poverty into prosperity, this is where it happens.
Yeah, somewhere along the line, and I know I experienced this growing up, that American life, that kind of a status quo of a picket fence and a dog and 2 kids and a mom and a dad, and you kind of a Leave It to Beaver, it became sort of mockable. Like it became a joke, somehow we were supposed to be on the vanguard and artists and doing something different and anything but what they did. And so what was this sort of unique American lifestyle became almost sort of, we looked at it like reefer madness, like, okay, come on, why are you pitching this? We don't need to hear this crap. So we started to try to get away from essentially what works. What works is either the internal combustion engine or mom and a dad raising kids, reading with their kids, religion, faith, community, involvement. That's what works. It's basically what I always say to everyone. It's like a nutritionist saying diet and exercise. And you go, yeah, but what about this Miami diet I was reading about? It's like diet and exercise. Diet, family, community, religion. That's it. That's it. Pay your taxes. Diet and exercise. And everyone goes, but it's so boring. It's like, yeah, it is. It's the only thing that works.
And it's also basic common sense. I remember a book that everything you need to learn in life, you learned in kindergarten. Socialism is redistributing, the old phrase, from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs. Imagine in kindergarten if the school's rule was every test we take, whatever the average score is, we're going to give to everybody.
Right.
Now, what do people do? What they naturally, are you going to study for your test? If you get the same grade, whether you study or not, what happens is no one studies. What happens in socialist economies, people don't work. And without work, you end up having misery. And it's interesting, socialism and communism are pitched in terms of equality. But if you look at communist countries, look, the leaders in China live like emperors. They have vast wealth. They have vast power. Meanwhile, in China, they've got 1 million people in concentration camps. By the way, when I went to bed last night and woke up this morning, I found out the communist government of China has sanctioned me last night. Mm-hmm. And they've sanctioned me because I have long been speaking out against their human rights abuses, against their torture and murder and oppression. But communism and socialism are all about inequality because those who have power get frozen in place. What you don't have in communism, what you don't have in socialism, is economic mobility. There aren't new people rising the economic ladder. There aren't new people succeeding.
Look, I always just kind of describe communism and socialism and many other things as a Rubik's Cube that'll never line up. You can spin it, you can hand it off to Bernie Sanders, you can hand it off to AOC, you can hand it off to Fidel Castro, and they go, oh no, I got this. They keep spinning it. It won't line up because it can't line up because it can't work. It can't mathematically work out. It will not. There's a reason it never has. And anyone who grabs that cube and starts spinning it around, I'll see in 100 years. You'll never get it to line up. It's impossible.
So a couple years ago, I did 3 different debates on CNN with Bernie Sanders, and they were town hall debates. They were 90 minutes each. One of them was on health care. 2 of them were on tax policy. And it's interesting because I would point out, all right, let's socialize medicine, which the left likes to talk about. Let's talk about the countries that have implemented. Let's talk about the United Kingdom and the waiting lists that you have, the rationing where people can't get the health care they want. Let's talk about Canada. Here's a number a lot of people don't know, 50,000. 50,000 is about the number every year of what are called health tourists, people coming from Canada to America because they can't get health care because the government rations it. And it's interesting. So the response of Bernie, whenever I pointed out the failings of socialized medicine, is like, well, no, that wasn't done right. We're going to do it differently here.
Right.
And every place on earth, Obamacare was pitched as the health insurance companies are bad guys. And I'm not a fan of insurance companies at all. Do you know in 2008, the profits of the top 10 health insurance companies, they were about $8 billion. By 2015, they had doubled to $15 billion. Obamacare made the health insurance companies rich because when the government is mandating a cartel, it collects a great deal of money. So when I challenged Bernie on it, he voted for Obamacare. He's like, well, no, they did it wrong. We got to do more.
Right.
And
But Chrysler did the jet car wrong. I got a better jet car. That's basically what I'm hearing. Everyone did it wrong, except for it's never going to work.
And let me ask a question, Adam. Why is it, do you think, that the state of California doesn't have socialized medicine today? Right. So we're in California right now.
Right.
California, there's a Democratic governor. There are Democratic supermajorities in both legislatures. Republicans can't stop socialized medicine. So every national Democrat says they're for it. There is absolutely nothing stopping California from implementing socialized medicine right now, except that when they looked at it, they realized it'd bankrupt the state, and it would drive small business. It would drive working class people out of the state because the taxes would have to go up so far that they'd flee. Do you know how to fit all 50 states? You know how many states have socialized medicine? 0. And the Democrats control a whole bunch of states. They can implement it, but what they want to do instead is mandate it nationally so you can't flee. So you wouldn't be able to get out of California and go to Texas. They'd say, nope, everywhere's got to get it. So unless you're willing to go to New Zealand or something, you're stuck.
Right.
Their ideas don't work. Not even Vermont, where Bernie Sanders is from. They don't have socialized medicine. If it worked, let one of the states implement it.
Well, the fundamental flaw to many of the ideas on the left is sort of, look, every creature's the same. If you go to a campsite, they say, don't leave your food out, don't feed the bears, lock the dumpsters, the bears will get into the dumpsters. We can't have the bears used to eating for free out of a dumpster. They got to go out, they got to hunt, they got to forage, they got to do what bears do. We can't just do it. And the Bernie Sanders of the world say, get the poor bears hungry, give them some food. And you go, well, that guy seems nice. He wants to feed the bear. My feeling is always, check back with me in 10 years and tell me how the bear population is doing. Now, I know you think you're a hero, and I know you think you're doing the right thing, and maybe your heart's in the right place, or maybe you just want to get votes. But either way, you're going to bring a nice picnic basket down to Yogi Bear and feed the bear. And I go, that seems good. It's good for today. Check with me in 5 years. We'll see how those bears are doing. They've lost their ability to hunt. They're all morbidly obese and they have diabetes. And then I say, don't feed the bears. We got to teach the bears to hunt. And then everyone looks at me and goes, why are you racist against bears? Or why do you hate bears? I go, I don't hate bears. This is reality on reality's terms.
Well, let's go back to the principle we were talking about a minute ago, that everything we need to know in life we learned in kindergarten. You and I are both parents. If your child is in school and you do your child's math homework, is it good for your kid? No. And it's the same principle that, I think of it from the perspective of my dad as a teenage immigrant washing dishes. I've said a bunch of times, thank God, some well-meaning liberal didn't come put his arm around him and say, Raphael, you're new to this country. You're poor. Let me take care of you. Let me give you a government check. Let me make you dependent. You're destroying someone's sense of responsibility, sense of self-worth. There is value and dignity to work. Now, look, people need help, and I'm all for if someone falls on hard times, helping them. But the objective should be, just like when your kid comes home with a math homework, you don't want to sit there and do it. Your objective should be to help them do it. If you have someone who's fallen on hard times, your objective should be to help them get back to work, to help them be able to provide for their family. And the left doesn't understand that they trap people in dependency, and it's a terrible thing. It is not helping anyone to just make them dependent on government. It destroys their opportunity to really achieve the American dream.
I was sitting around on the show a week and a half ago. I said, anyone in this building born before 1974, nobody but me, I said, take a look at the opening of the sitcom Good Times I used to watch as a kid. That was Chicago. That was a black family.
J.J. Dynamite, Kid Dynamite.
That was the inner city. Yeah. That was the project. It's been 46 years. It's all run by the Democrats. What has changed in you free this and free housing and low income, all with the best intentions, perhaps. Has that part of Chicago changed at all? Has it gotten any better? Has the schools gotten better? Did they ever get out of the projects? And the answer is no. It's as bad as it ever was. Nothing has changed. So now We've studied it for 50 years. It doesn't work. And what I hear from a lot of people is now we have to double down. We have to do more. We have to feed more money. It's like a business that's been failing for 50 years. And the answer is we need to raise some more capital. Maybe our business plan is bad.
What, you remember the old Saturday Night Live skit, More Cowbell?
Right.
I mean, that's
right.
They keep repeating policies that don't work. You look at the big cities, almost all of them have been run by Democrats for 50 years. And the policies...
Chicago's last Democratic mayor, last Republican mayor, 1931.
And their policies don't work. I mean, they
No, they don't work because the only thing that does work is diet and exercise in the internal combustion engine. And you guys are going off in all these different directions, which I wish they did work, but they don't. So as far as that in schools, we're talking about the metaphor of doing your kids' homework for one of the things that's vexing to me is vouchers and school choice and all that. I have no education. I don't come from that world. I just look at it as first things first, competition always kind of brings out the best in everybody. And secondly, all we do is talk about the failing system, the LA Unified, Boston and Chicago, and everything's failing. I'm like, well, why not do the charter schools? I've looked at the numbers. The numbers are impressive. They've got to be better than the numbers that we're currently riding on in Baltimore and a lot of these inner cities. I get it. The teachers, unions, they're mobbed up with the politicians. How do they answer with a straight face, though, is what I'm saying. How can you possibly, why isn't this bipartisan? How could you possibly be against school choice?
Listen, you're exactly right, and it is complete hypocrisy. School choice, I think, is the most compelling civil rights issue facing this country right now. If you if you want people to have a chance at the American dream, education is the gateway. If you get an education, you think of every other problem we've got, whether it's crime, whether it's poverty, whether it's health care, whether it's substance abuse. If you get an education, kids are much more likely to overcome those problems. Not guaranteed, but their odds of success are much, much greater. If kids don't get an education, we know to a mathematical certainty all of those other challenges are much, much more likely. And you've got low-income kids, in many instances, African-American kids, Hispanic kids, trapped in schools that are not performing. And I believe every child in America, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your wealth, regardless of your zip code, you should have a right to access quality education. And so I am passionate about school choice, and that means charter schools, that means scholarships, that means tax credits, that means empower the kids and parents to get a good education. And again, we were talking about what works. So I got involved in the school choice movement 25, 30 years ago. At the time, it was mostly theoretical, hadn't been implemented in many places. And so the argument against it that was given, if we give parents and kids a choice, it'll destroy the public school system. And listen, that's an argument. If that was true, I would oppose school choice. I'm not interested in destroying the public school system. That's where the vast majority of kids are getting educated. We now know as a fact that is false because we've seen school choice programs implemented all over the country. And here's what happens. Number one is the kids that get scholarships. They end up doing better. They have better reading scores, better math scores. They get into college at a higher rate. They succeed more. But number two, and you made the point just instinctively, competition is good. And in every sector, monopolies are bad. Competition is good. And when you have kids getting scholarship and choice, the quality of education in the public schools for the kids that never get a scholarship, their quality of education gets better. Now, you asked why do the Democrats oppose it? It's simple politics. The teachers' unions are among the most important financial donors and foot soldiers of the Democratic Party. And so the teachers' union bosses have decided school choice is a threat to them. I actually think a lot of teachers, and I've talked to a lot of teachers who disagree with that. Look, most teachers go into teaching because they love kids and they want to give kids a better opportunity. And Democratic politicians are just siding with the money. They're bought and paid for. You look at public opinion polls in the African-American community and Hispanic community, consistently 60, 70, even 80% of African-American and Hispanic parents want school choice, and yet Democratic politicians tell them no. I think we should fight for everyone to have school choice.
Well, first thing, I mean, I have a million thoughts. One is, it feels borderline cruel.
Yes.
To have poor inner city kids begging for a chance for their kid to get an education, and a Democrat saying, no, we're against this thing that could possibly help, return to the failing, dangerous school that we provide for you. That feels like a dereliction of duty. That feels like almost like a fiduciary duty. Like really somebody should be arrested for that decision. Also, you don't have to be an expert just to know that if you said, basically the school system as it stands now is, you live in this place, and so you must attend that school. Imagine if car dealerships worked that way. Like, hey, you got to go to Gowdy Ford if you live within a 7-block. Well, what's Gowdy Ford's motivation for stepping up their day? You think there's going to be dealing days or free hot dogs and popcorn for the kids on Saturday? I mean, think about what you're doing when you're selling a car. You have to... You know that people can drive 100 miles to get the best deal, and you better offer the best service agreements and the best salespeople and the best service department. I mean, think about what you have to do. Have you ever walked into a car dealer and it was a mess, and the guy behind the counter was tired and ignored you and told you to wait in line and was rude? No, because you'll go right across the street to the next place. So you walk into car dealerships, they're immaculate. Someone's dressed to the nines. Hi, sir. Come on in. Have a seat. Would you like a cup of coffee? I mean, they're competing. That's what competition does. This notion of, well, we'll get rid of the competition, but they'll still do the right thing. Untrue. Never works. Why do you think you have failing school systems? And yes, that tide may raise all boats. Not the byproduct of having school choice and vouchers and charter schools would be having the public schools upping their game as well. And the notion that you could be against something that just has the word choice in it. Like, you are the party of choice, and you're against something that has the word choice in it. Also, when you're talking about some of these schools that need it the most, the percentage of kids that can do math on a grade level or read on a grade level, it's so appalling and disappointing and embarrassing that the notion that you would even raise your voice to an alternative to your 10% at grade level or mathematics and reading or lower is laughable to me. And I think I heard Biden say that, if he gets elected, he's getting rid of this stuff.
Yeah, Biden is all in on that, and that is what he's committed. And, again, going back to your what we began this discussion with, what works. We know that this works. The rich and the middle class, they've had school choice since the dawn of time. If you're wealthy, number one, the percentage of Democratic politicians who are opposed to school choice, who have their own kids in elite private schools, is massive. So they're complete hypocrites, and they're not going to send their kids to the inner city public schools, but they're happy to trap those children in them. But if you think about it, I'll give you an amazing statistic from Cleveland. So Cleveland, a couple decades ago, implemented a school choice system. At the time they did it, a student entering 9th grade in the Cleveland public schools was statistically more likely to be a victim of violent crime at school than he or she was likely to graduate on time in 4 years.
Wow.
And you think about a single mom, an African-American mom in the inner city who loves her kids, who's struggling, and she has to send her little girl to a school where kids are getting assaulted in the bathroom, where they're not learning. That desperation, and you know what? If in a wealthy neighborhood, if in Beverly Hills, the public school had a 50% dropout rate of those who graduated, 70% couldn't read. If there was violence and assaults and sexual assaults and physical assaults in the hallways, that school would be empty. The parents there have the means to either move to another neighborhood and move into a different public school. That's a means of school choice. If you've got the means to say, all right, this school's not very good, I'm going to buy a different house, that's one version of school choice. Or to pay for a private school, but it's low income, it's poor parents.
Yeah.
Who the politicians are saying, sorry, you're stuck. The rich people can move their kids, but you don't get to. And I think the single biggest lie in all of politics is that Republicans are the party of the rich and Democrats are the party of the poor. I think today's Democratic Party is the party of wealthy elites. They're not worried about something like school choice because their kids are just fine. And my hope is Republicans are and should be the party of working men and women, the blue-collar party, the party of Ohio steel workers and truck drivers and waiters and waitresses and people that are climbing that economic ladder. And school choice, I think, is fundamental.
Well, school choice and, disbanding the police force affects the same group about the same way.
Exactly right.
It doesn't affect the people in the good neighborhoods who have the good schools and the private schools. It affects the kids and the parents in the tough areas. And also, as I was thinking about it, if you take this inner city kid we're talking about with the single mom, that the sort of archetype for what we're talking about, who would really benefit from school choice, look at it this way. You either get what you get as a young person. You either get what you need at home, meaning a strong dad, a strong family unit that can overcome, let's say, a tough school. So if you have a tough school, but you have a dad who's present, who's there, who's teaching all the hard lessons, who's staying up and doing the homework, and the mom and this poor but proud kind of unit, then you can overcome a poor school system. But now you take the single mom, maybe working a couple of jobs, taking public transportation, not coming home till 10 at night. You have these sort of latchkey kids. You have the broken home situation. They then go into a broken school system. That's 0 for 2. And where the hell are they going to be when they're 17? The school, a charter school, good school that's got some discipline, school that is a meritocracy, school that, I've seen it. The kids are late. They have to do 10 push-ups in the hall and hustle up and come on a weekend. The teachers that are not in the union, that are willing to put in the overtime and the extra time, and they're getting paid accordingly. The ones that want to work Saturdays are getting paid more than the ones that knock off for the weekend. That school is the only chance that kid has because the home is such a wreck. The only thing that's going to save him is school. And when the school is worse than the home, God help that kid when he's 18. And God help us when that kid just is out in society at 18.
Well, and you're exactly right. I'll give an example. We're talking about cars. You're a car guy. You and I both remember the cars in the 1970s when you had the big three in Detroit, and the quality of American cars was not great.
No, we had the Chrysler Cordoba
and the
Matador, the AMC.
And then you remember the Japanese imports came in, and people were freaking out that these low-cost, high-quality Japanese imports were going to destroy the American auto industry.
Right.
And, I mean, it was a big deal in sort of late 70s, early 80s.
Sure.
And what happened is you saw a dramatic improvement in quality in cars. Remember, Lee Iacocca at Chrysler went in and said, okay, we can't have our cars breaking down anymore. We actually got to produce a product that competes. You were talking about going to a car dealership. Compare a car dealership to the DMV. The DMV is a government monopoly. You don't like how they treat you? Well, tough luck. You ain't getting a driver's license. Good luck going somewhere else.
First off, I've used the car analogy a million times. You're 100% right. You can't buy a bad car now. There's no such thing as a bad Ford or a bad Chevy or a bad GM or bad anything. It's all good. It all works. There's differences, but it all works. And yes, they came in and they forced the American car companies were literally bloated. The cars were fat and bloated and slow and sloppy and not efficient. And Datsun at the time, before they were Nissan and Honda, they came in and everyone went, what's this going to do to the big three? And they went, well, it's going to force them to get their shit together. Or die or be gone. AMC's gone. Many companies are gone. But the ones that survive are going to have to up their game. And guess who the benefactor is? We are. Anyone who wants to go, you can go out and buy a $21,000 Ford Fiesta and it kicks ass.
Yeah.
And that's who wins, just like the kids would win with the school competition.
When you're talking about bloated, you look at, particularly, you have inner city public schools that become bureaucracies, that have all these administrators that don't have teachers. And by the way, one of the lies politicians say is it's all money. We need to just spend more and more money. And look, money makes a difference. I can tell you in the District of Columbia, they spend $23,000 per student, and yet their education outcomes are terrible, and there's a massive waiting list of kids looking to get scholarships because they actually want to get an education. Just like the big three car companies, there was all of this bloated overhead. And what's amazing, that you look at the school choice programs across the country, most of them provide a scholarship that is only a fraction of what the public schools get. And Heidi and I are real involved with a scholarship program called ACE Scholarships that gives scholarships for kids to attend Catholic schools or private schools and just privately gives scholarships. And you see these schools that are making it on a fraction of what's going to the inner city public schools, that are making it on just a few $1,000s a kid. And yet, so they can't have much overhead because they don't have the money for it. And yet you've got heroic teachers and kids that are being given a lifeline. I mean, this is civil rights. If you want, and so many politicians say, well, we can't do it. And they're willing to just let another generation of kids be abandoned.
To me, it borders on criminal. And I say criminal because you end up turning a lot of people into criminals, and a lot of people get shot by the people who turn to criminals because they couldn't go the right direction because we didn't give them that choice. We're going to bring Michael Knowles in a few moments. I had a joke for you and Michael. I'll wait for Michael to come in here. I had thoughts. I was listening to Ilhan Omar talking about dismantling the system, and people have been playing this clip, and it's been making the rounds, and it sounds horrible. And she sounds like the world's angriest woman. But there's a part of it that I really wanted to drill down on, just one word, because everyone is talking about dismantle as being sort of the operative word. But for me, that's not the operative word in this 30-second clip that we'll play for you. Sorry, here we go.
As long as our economy and political systems prioritize profit without considering who is profiting, who is being shut out, we will perpetuate this inequality. So we cannot stop at criminal justice system. We must begin the work of dismantling the whole system of oppression wherever we find it.
All right. Now, a system of oppression, dismantling, I'm fine with. Wherever we find it, wherever she finds it, she's going to find it in a goddamn snow cone. She's going to find it in an end table. She's going to find it when she looks. She's going to see clouds that look like oppression if she lays down on her back in a park. This thing where it's like, hey, all we want to do is dismantle oppression. Okay. How are we going to recognize oppression? Oh, where we find it, where you find it, you're going to find it everywhere. Every company where the guy in the corner office that started the business and owns the building, every time that guy's getting paid 3 times as much as the guy down on the factory floor, you're going to find it. That's the part that worries me. It's where she's going to find it. It's not where it is. It's where we find it.
Yes, and the modern left is about political power. It is about they
shut it down.
Want to control you. She's telling you she wants to be in charge of you. She's going to decide what gets torn down and what doesn't. Listen, I have a lot of libertarian instincts and leanings, and the beauty of being a libertarian is you're willing to say, listen, let people be free and live their lives and make their own choices. When it comes to free speech, the modern left wants to silence anyone who disagrees. You can't have a differing view, or you will be silenced, you will be canceled. And that is profoundly dangerous. And, it's interesting. A lot of young people find socialism and the extreme left attractive. And one thing I often will ask them, I'll say, I agree with Bernie Sanders. And they look at me, they're really confused when I say that. And I say, look, Bernie says Washington's corrupt. He says both parties are in on it, Democrats and Republicans. That's exactly right. He says it favors big business and special interest and lobbyists. Exactly right. The only place I disagree with Bernie and disagree with Omar is the solution. If Washington is corrupt, why on earth would you want to give Washington more power? She says the system is oppressive, so let's give the system even more power over your life. My view is, if the system's corrupt and it favors the rich and powerful, take the power out of the system and bring it back to the people.
Right. How can you oppress people with no power if you're not possessing all the power? Yeah, I found that scary. I sometimes want to ask guys like you, when I out here and I hear people like Maxine Waters speak, I think, oh, this lady's nuts. Like, it's not bad policy, although it's always bad policy, but I just think she's nuts. And when I hear, and I look at everything from a psychological standpoint, when I hear like Nancy Pelosi speak, I picture a person with no enemies, or I see someone that's an apex predator. Like when you see lions sleeping in the middle of the Serengeti in a big pile, and they're like, aren't they worried? It's like, no, they're not worried, because no one's ever coming after them and no one's ever taken their seat. No one's ever going to vote them out. She has some sort of Democratic supermajority in her state, and she says things that no politician would ever say if they had any fear of a next election or ever being voted out. She gets asked questions about statues. We'll play the clip. It made Mark Garagos laugh his ass off. And she's just dismissive about it. Like, look, I feel like you have some duty to at least answer the question. She just says things like, yeah, who cares? I mean, she talks like someone who has permanent tenure, can never be fired, never has to do anything, and never held accountable. And so just listen to the way she answers this question.
The city of Richmond is obviously in sync with your desire to get rid of Confederate statues, but in Baltimore and Little Italy, the statue of Christopher Columbus was removed or taken down. And I wonder if you have anything to share about that.
Well, I'm not a big, I don't even have my grandmother's earrings. I'm not a big, let's see what we have in terms of monuments in this. If the community doesn't want the statue there, the statue shouldn't be there.
Exactly. Shouldn't that be done by a commission or the city council, not a mob in the middle of the night throwing it into the harbor?
People will do what they do.
People do what they do is the question. I wanted the one where she said, I'm not a statue person, by the way, Max Pata, but you can yell Kaylin later. But she's not a statue person. First off, we're not asking you about statues. We're asking you about civilization and rule of law and angry mobs. And for you, I live in California. I can't crack a beer and walk along the beach without being arrested. Now, and I can't say to the guy arrest me, hey, I do what I do. That's my thing, man. I like to have a beer on the beach, Somebody said mobs coming at night, tearing down a statue and throwing it in the river, and her answer was people do what they do. That's an insane answer from an elected official. I know she sides with them, but she's still compelled to say, you know what, I don't condone that. If you want to have a discussion about it, her answer was patently insane. It's also sort of angry and dismissive and passive aggressive, but it also struck me as she's got so much FU money and doesn't really care that she doesn't care what she sounds like. And she knows no one is ever going to vote her out of anything. So she just sits there with impunity. That's an insane answer for a politician to give.
She is, number one, enormously rich. She's got over $100 million in personal wealth. She is, number two, she believes she's democratically untouchable, that she'll never be voted out. But number three, her biggest protection are the media that are like Praetorian guards. And they're never going to ask her hard questions. They're never going to press her. They're never going to challenge her. And she can be hypocritical. She can be, because the media has become so partisan. Look.
Yes, that is the answer you would give if you thought you were basically in a in a prison gang and you're surrounded by your henchmen and no one was going to get near you. That's an insane answer to give to the media if the media followed up and held your feet to the fire.
It shouldn't be controversial or difficult for anyone to say violence is wrong. Murder is wrong. Mob violence, listen, a particular statue there, she was being asked about Christopher Columbus. There's a lot of debate about Christopher Columbus. Look, I personally am not a fan of trying to erase our history, but reasonable people can disagree with that. If someone wants to go make an argument, if there's a Christopher Columbus statue somewhere and you want to make an argument that you don't want him honored, you can have a debate about that through a democratic process. But that's not what these mobs are doing. They're coming in, tearing it down, and her attitude is, because I agree, because that mob is on my side, I'm in favor of the mob violence. And that is a really dangerous line.
Well, first off, she sounds addled, a little stupid, and partially insane. But people are going to do what people are going to do is not an answer in any way, shape, or form to really any question that's ever been asked. You're being asked a question, and you're basically saying, so what? I mean, it doesn't... It's not an acceptable answer if you said, hey, I run a hot dog stand and we put all the ketchup packets out and people keep grabbing all of them and we're out by lunch. How are we going to fix that? People are going to do what people are going to. It's not an answer. It's not an answer for anything at any time. That's the part that's sort of insane to me. She seems like she almost has contempt. By the way, it's so funny, these people that never get asked a tough question, when they do get asked a question that's not even tough, it's a 4.5 on the tough department, they get so angry at the person. Like, she gets really dismissive anytime someone wants something. She's like, what about all these statues? Okay, I'm not a statue person. Which obviously it's a symbol both in its execution and a symbol of our society falling apart, and that angry mobs can tie chains around it and pull it down and burn them on fire and throw in the river. It's not whether you're a statue person. Like, I don't have statues around my house either. I'm not a statue person. I do worry about angry groups hitting the street and vandalizing. And one of those statues got pulled down on someone and crushed your skull.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm not a statue person either, but we're asking about a problem.
Mob violence is wrong. This should be a simple proposition. And, unfortunately, the Democratic Party, they've really unleashed, I think, the crazies in their party. If I were talking to you a month ago, just 30 days ago, and I would have suggested, Adam, the Democratic Party is going to advocate abolishing the police. You'd have said, come on, Ted, that's a little nutty. No one's going that far. Mm-hmm. And that's where they are in terms of mob violence. You look, George Floyd's killing was horrific. It was an abuse of power. It was illegal, and the officers are rightly being prosecuted. That was, for a brief moment, actually a unifying moment where everyone agreed. They looked at that video, were horrified. This is criminal conduct that needs to be prosecuted. And then what happened is what started off as for many people, peaceful protests for racial justice became co-opted by violent rioters who engaged in physical assaults, who firebombed police cars, who looted stores, and many of these stores that were burned to the ground or looted were owned by African-American small business people. Some of the most powerful and compelling images online are residents of the inner city, African-Americans weeping, saying, look, my grocery store, the only place I can go buy groceries, has now been destroyed by violent rioters, many of whom don't even live here and came in to engage in that violence. And you look at the violence and police officers who were shot. And the Democratic Party right now, they're not willing to condemn the violence. AOC said, I think yesterday, well, the reason for the skyrocketing crime rates in New York City is that people are out of work, and you got to understand when people are out of work, they're hungry and they're going to steal a loaf of bread.
That kind of talk is, I have a a thing that I say, which is stupid or liar. And in her case, it's liar. I listened to her, and my God, these people don't have a shred of dignity. She's saying, look, people are cooped up. They don't have a job. The economy's failing. They're starving. So they go out and they steal a loaf of bread. First off, do you think that's the crime we're speaking of? Does anyone ever brought up a loaf of bread when they're discussing crime? Do you think you turn on Tucker Carlson at night and he goes, breaking news, a loaf of Wonder Bread has been stolen from a bodega? No. We're talking about physical assaults. We're talking about arson. We're talking about physically beating cops. We're talking about shooting into crowds. Nobody's talking about a loaf of bread, AOC, and you're not talking about a loaf of bread either. You've taken this thing, which is a crime, and you've turned it into this petty crime, which doesn't exist, and there's nobody thinking about a loaf of bread. Now, for her to try to pitch that to anybody is insane. That's an insane grandiosity. You've never heard anyone say a loaf of bread. No one's thinking of a loaf of bread. And, by the way, even during good times, I don't think anybody we know would have a righteous problem with a hungry mom who had no job stealing a loaf of bread. The notion that we want that person put in Sing Sing is insane.
At the end of the day, it's not complicated. Murderers are not stealing loaves of bread. This is not Jean Valjean. She is engaged in deliberate political deception. And one of the problems in city after city where you demonize and you vilify and you attack police officers, consistently what we see is the murder rates go up. It's something that's been documented as what's called the Ferguson effect.
Sure.
Which is, look, if you're a cop, if you're a cop, you are, and you're getting demonized and attacked, you're afraid to engage with the community, and what that results. So the efforts of the far left, they are resulting right now in more black lives being lost, because many of these most high crime neighborhoods are low income neighborhoods that have very significant African American and Hispanic populations. And when you demagogue the cops, let me give you a thought experiment. Yes. Imagine a politician said the following: I want to take all of the police officers out of the black and Hispanic neighborhoods and move them to white neighborhoods.
Right.
Now, you would rightly denounce that guy as a total racist bigot. What do you mean? You're going to take the cops away? Don't black people and Hispanic people have a right to be protected by cops? That's what the Democrats are arguing for. Pull them out. Who do you think the victims are of these violent criminals? And they are often Hispanic and African Americans. And the Democrats are saying, just like they're saying to the kids who want school choice, well, tough luck for you. Good luck with the gangs.
It's all unintended consequences, number one. Number two, it is exactly the same as a school choice, which is the folks that need it the most are getting it the least. I don't need the extra policing in my neighborhood, and I don't need the school choice in my neighborhood. It's exactly analogous. You're hurting the people. You're proclaiming to help, and I don't even know anymore if you want to help those people. It's starting to look to me like you don't.
Too many politicians just want power. So there's a combination of ignorance and selfishness. And it's also, I'm reminded of what Reagan said a long time ago about the left. He said it's not what they don't know. It's that so much of what they know just isn't so.
Yes. I make this, I talked to Dennis Prager about this quite a bit, which is starting to have to make the distinction between liberal and left. I think of myself as liberal. Dennis Prager is very conservative, but he thinks of himself as liberal. I definitely think of myself as liberal. What's going in the left and liberal used to sort of be the same thing. There's a distinction now between being liberal, who almost everyone I know is liberal, and then this sort of AOC, Bernie Sanders, that kind of leftism, pull back the cops, and everyone has an undefined gender and all this kind of stuff. This is not the kind of liberal thinking that I sort of grew up embracing. And I don't know do you have thoughts on that?
So look, I mean, a classical liberal, which I've always considered myself, is someone who defends liberty, defends the liberty of the individual. Now, that word has been co-opted, and you're right that the hard left, they're statists. They believe in government power. They believe in I was out in California a couple of weeks ago. Heidi's family's from California. We were out, and I was visiting with a woman who's a kindergarten teacher. And she told me, she said, listen, I'm really afraid right now. She said, there's a McCarthyism in the air that I'm afraid, like, if I say the wrong thing, I'll be fired. So she's like, I just won't say anything. I'm just like, you may know the name of, I guess there was a soccer player here in L.A. professional soccer player was fired because his wife
tweeted some stuff out.
I mean, what the hell is that? And it's important to understand, look, there's sort of both sides do it.
Alexander Kate or some version of that, so my producer says. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, let's not remove everyone from their livelihood. Also, I don't know, I'm not a politician, but these guys were earners. They were taxpayers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let them contribute.
And people have a tendency to think, well, everybody does it. But actually right now, that's not true. So it's the left that is calling for censorship. It's the left that is silencing people. So it's, you don't see people on the right. I'm not saying silence Bernie Sanders. I'm not saying silence AOC. I'm actually happy for socialists. The more they talk, the less it makes sense. And so it's not like both sides are saying silence the other side. It's one side that are saying, if you dare disagree. And I'll give an example. Steven Crowder.
Right.
Who I've done a show a number of times. As you know, YouTube has demonetized him. I sat down with the CEO of YouTube, and she explained to me, she said, well, look, he didn't do anything to violate our policies. So she conceded that. He's entirely consistent with their policies. But she said, look, you should be glad. We just cut off all his revenue. We didn't take him down, which is what we were being pressed by the left to do. And I said to her, listen, Susan, it's only one side. I'm not saying silence the other side, and you shouldn't feel glad. What an Orwellian concept. Would it be a problem for your show if you were magically demonetized and all your revenue disappeared?
I know. It's this thing of like saying, we didn't say you can't speak on our college campus. I mean, you can't speak on our college campus. We didn't say you couldn't speak. Go in that mop closet and talk. Like, okay, but how do I support my family?
And by the way, we won't protect you if they actually physically assault you, which too many college campuses that's happened.
I'm going to challenge you because I saw a tweet that said Cruz said we should boycott Nike, but he's against boycotting Boya Foods or whatever the food is. Can you explain that?
Yeah, no, that's actually, it is a fair point. So look, I do think any one of us has a right to boycott someone. That's part of free speech. You can express, all right, I don't agree with this or that or the other, and you have a right to do it. And, with Nike, so I've actually my whole life, I think every, tennis shoe I bought, every short T-shirt, I was always a Nike consumer. And Nike finally drove me over the edge because they just seemed to be leaning in over and over again on embracing anti-American sentiment, on sort of feeding whether it's, making Colin Kaepernick their kind of lead spokesperson, embracing kneeling for the flag. And I just got to a point where I said publicly, all right, I'm not going to buy their products anymore. I do think there's a difference, and it's a difference of degree. It's not a categorical difference. What you see on the left is they're trying to cancel anyone that deviates in any regard. So Goya Foods, look, I'm Cuban. I grew up eating Goya Foods, black beans my whole life. There's a whole movement on the left to try to cancel Goya Foods because their CEO said positive words about Trump. Your buddy Jimmy Kimmel is facing an assault right now because years ago he did some comedy routines where he wore blackface, and there is an excessiveness to the cancel culture on the left, and I viewed Nike. I actually spoke out against it several times, and they kept getting more and more extreme. And I decided, all right, I'm out. And I think there's a difference between trying to do that across the board to everyone versus a threshold where you have a right to say, all right, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Well, it's sort of feels to me like once in a while you hear people go, well, you got CNN and they have one sort of, they go one direction, and they have Fox and they go another direction, and they go, okay, so it's even. And I go, no, there's the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, MSNBC, ABC, all the major networks, all the major newspapers, and Fox. So it's like this thing of pretending like, well, there's you boycott Goya, they boycott Goya Foods, you boycott Nike. It's like, no, it's not an even thing. It's everything all the time versus picking and choosing certain moments. And you can say, well, maybe to be completely consistent, then you should call for no boycotts of anything at any of the time. But what we're kind of saying is I think that left you're talking about is trying to cancel everyone all the time.
It's a hair trigger as a tool of domination and censorship. And look, boycotts have been, you look at Dr. Martin Luther King and, for example, the bus boycotts. I mean, they are a tool that you can legitimately use, but the left is trying to use it. When you fire a soccer player because his wife tweets, all lives matter, that's crazy.
Well, the craziest part of this whole new world we're living in is the, editor at the New York Times with the Tom Cotton op-ed piece. Like, it's someone's opinion. You're allowed to share someone else's opinion. It's an op-ed.
And it's the ideological intolerance. Sadly, it was fostered at many of our universities where they had this culture. And now the graduates come out of the universities and they're the 20-somethings. And so what happened at the New York Times is the 20-something reporters and staffers essentially rose up in an outrun. They got the editor of the New York Times fired because he dared publish an op-ed from a sitting U.S. senator. By the way, if you disagree with it, argue on the other side. I will say that's one of the reasons I think podcasts are doing well. I think that's one of the reasons people listen to your show. I think that's one of the reasons my podcast, Verdict, we're getting lots and lots of people signing up and subscribing is because so much of the media is so biased that actually having a real conversation, you can't have that on CNN, and you rarely have that on Fox. Both sides are pretty biased.
I agree. They are essentially doing the version of sort of the example I use is, 2 Live Crew came out with a rap album. A bunch of Tipper Gore types got against it because of language and misogyny and everything else. And it was an album that probably could have came and went, sold 100,000 units. Instead, it went triple platinum because they raised their voice. And I think when you look at podcasting and you see so many different variations and honestly, a lot of conservative podcasts, I've been doing this for almost 12 years. There were no conservative voices in the top 100 of the Apple podcast community ever until recently. And the reason there's so many folks now inhabiting the charts of iTunes on the conservative side is because that's the group that's being silenced by CNN and beyond. And so they're creating this almost black market of ideas called podcasts. And in a way, they're going to hurt their own business because people are going to stop going over there for business and move over to other platforms where they can hear alternative ideas that they weren't fostering. I need to hit a quick spot here. We're going to bring Michael Knowles in real quick. And I got some ideas and possibly some comedy for you two. First, I'll tell you about Geico. Right now, Geico is offering an extra 15% credit on motorcycle and RV policies, 15% on top of the money they're already saving you if you're going with Geico. So what are you waiting for? You need to head on over to Geico. Never been a better time to switch. Save an extra 15% when you switch by October 7th. Visit geico.com and learn more. Save that 15% by October 7th at geico.com. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll bring your partner in podcast crime, Michael Knowles, in, and we'll finish up with him right after this.
The Adam Carolla Show presents Michael Knowles' birthday cocktail party for March 18th. Let's check out the guest list. Singer Adam Levine. Ooh, it's Queen Latifah. Vanessa Williams is here. So is Brendan Schaub. The 22nd and 24th President of the United States, Grover Cleveland, Mike Rowe, and Dane Cook. Have a good party, Michael. Now, back to the Adam Carolla Show.
Yeah, I think I'd rather go to Michael's party than Ted's party.
Yeah, he's beaten me on that. Although I will say, so it referenced, all right, I'm going to just sort of make a sort of geekish admission. A few years back, I wrote an op-ed, and I talked about, so most people, a lot of people know Trump is the 45th president. And so most people think, okay, there have been 45 presidents. And so I wrote an op-ed, I think at the time, Bush was president, so I've said there are 43 people who've been president of the United States, and I got corrected that was wrong. So Trump is not he's the 45th president, but only 44 people have been president of the United States because Grover Cleveland was president twice non-consecutively. So that there are only 44 people, but there have been 45 presidents. And so I got corrected on my op-ed. And there you go, a little bit of history.
Michael Knowles here does his own podcast as well as host, for lack of a better term, although it's a lot of give and take with Ted Cruz as well. Michael, I think I saw you sort of backstage, for lack of a better term, over at Ben Shapiro's place last.
That's right. I'm trying to think if the last time it was either at Shapiro's place or at Dennis Prager's birthday party. It may have been,
could have been Prager's birthday party. Got it. You know, there's a few guys, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but like, you hear about celebrities sort of coming and going, and they're guys you like or guys you thought that were funny or talented. And, you know, sometimes, like I remember when I heard John Candy died, and I was like, oh, that guy made me laugh, you know. But every once in a while, when I think about Dennis Prager's voice not being with us, when I think about not being able to turn that guy on and hear that guy, or I wonder, you know, something happens on a Sunday and you think, I wonder what Dennis has to say about this. That guy's voice. And in a world where there's many funny people, many smart people, many people that have a lot of wisdom, I always think, God, what's the world going to be like without that guy's voice, right?
I know, it's true literally, and then obviously the things he talks about as well. But he also just has a literally distinctive voice. The way I always judge if someone is saying the right things, if they're important in the culture, is how many times their political opponents try to get them fired. And for Dennis, I think it's just about every day at this point.
Well, I'll give a Prager example. So I had Dennis testify at a hearing I chaired on censorship in social media. And one of the things he discussed was how YouTube censored PragerU's output. And the one that I thought was the funniest is they censored a PragerU video on the 10 Commandments because it discussed murder.
Right.
And it was just like, is this The Onion? And he's like, well, you know, and as Dennis testified, he said, yeah, I'm saying thou shalt not murder. How is that? And they deemed it adult content because it was discussing murder. And it's, you know, it's pretty ridiculous.
I was listening to one of your podcasts or videocasts or vodcasts, or I was listening to Verdict with Ted Cruz, and I was watching it. And it was a couple of episodes back, but we're talking about abolish the police. And I think you brought up abolishing ICE.
Yeah.
And how insane that sounds. And I'll let you in on a little comedy bit I do on occasion when they used to let you do stand-up, which was ICE and AOC, and everyone wants to get rid of ICE. And I think it's the acronym, which is Immigration Customs Enforcement. And I said, you know, ICE was the name of the douchebag pilot in Top Gun. That was Val Kilmer. He was the Iceman. And ICE also sounds cold and heartless and tough. And so the AOCs of the world and the rest of that ilk is like, abolish ICE. We don't need ICE. And everyone's going to like, yeah, what do we need ICE for? These cold, brutal guys. And I said, all you got to do to keep ICE, and Ted, I really do mean this, and I think you should go push for this when the time comes. Immigration Customs Enforcement. Start it with the word national. National immigrant. Who would want to abolish NICE? No one. Who on their right mind is going to stand up in the Senate floor and go, we got to get rid of this NICE? Nobody's going to want to get rid of nice. No one's going to want to go on record as getting rid of nice. And you just put national in front of it, and it goes on for 1,000 years.
I think you have a brilliant solution. It reminds me of years ago, the FBI had a law enforcement tool, and it was some of the sort of early internet monitoring, and it was called Carnivore.
Right.
And it was a whole big thing, and I remember thinking, what a terrible name. Like, if they'd named it Fuzzy Bunny Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, if it's carnivore, you're like, okay, what is this? It's like a T-Rex coming after me, and it's the same, language matters.
These acronyms can get you in trouble. It reminds me of when they dedicated this law school to the late, great Justice Scalia, whom you knew very well, and they decided to call it the Antonin Scalia School of Law. That's not how you want people to refer to your law school. I think they changed the words around a little bit.
The other thing in the comedy department, and stop me if you've heard this one before, but I kept thinking, Ted Cruz always reminded me, your voice, your cadence, and your mannerisms reminded me of a character actor I used to hear growing up. Now, if you've heard this one before, you know what I'm talking about. And I haven't even heard it. I've just heard it in my head. This guy was named Pat Buttram. It's an exaggerated version of you, but it still reminded me of you. He was a very popular voiceover guy. He did a lot of Disney movies in the 70s and stuff, but known best as from the character of Mr. Haney from Green Acres. So, Chris, you have a snippet of Mr. Haney. Now you have to close your eyes because if we look at it, it's not gonna work. Let's see.
Just looking up the meaning of that word in this new handy pocket dictionary, which I am offering today for only $1.
Anything?
Where can I buy it? I don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
Look, to be honest, all politicians are frustrated actors, and so if I could have been Mr. Haney, sign me up. I did high school theater, but I didn't have the chops. I didn't have the talent. You were an actor here in Hollywood before the podcasting world pulled you in.
But you know what people say? They say politics is acting for very, very attractive people. So
that's not exactly how that quote goes.
No? Okay. All right. Never mind.
By the way, speaking of Green Acres, have you seen the video of Trump singing the Green Acres song?
No.
Oh, no, he did this at the Emmys. No, if you Google it, your producers can find it in 30 seconds. He's literally in farmer's overalls singing, Green Acres.
Oh, it sounds familiar.
I mean, it was pre-politics, but it's a fairly surreal video clip.
It was in a world where, Gilligan's Island, Green Acres, they laid it all out in a 45-second song. Green Acres laid it out. Manhattan is where she'd rather stay. She gets allergic smelling hay. She enjoys a penthouse view. It was and she said, darling, I love you, but give me
Park Avenue,
right? And I grew up in North Hollywood in a little crappy house in the valley, and I had all this Park Avenue and penthouse stuff and furs and jewels and stuff. I was just looking at it going, where is this? What goes on?
And I got to say, Adam, you know how to hurt a guy. You say, gosh, you reminded me of a popular character actor. And I'm thinking, all right, Sean Connery, James Bond,
Cary Grant,
Superman. Then you said Disney, and I'm like, all right, who's the guy that voiced Hercules? And then you go, no, Mr. Haney from Green Acres. It's like,
well, that guy, if you look at that guy's IMDb page, he must have done thousands of jobs. But you're right. Nobody wants to be compared to Pat Buttram. Even has a weird name, sort of homoerotic. So, are we good? How are we on good terms with Kimmel? How did that thing end? And I'll tell you my version, not my version of it, but I know you guys played a day before Father's Day or maybe 2 days, or a day or two before Father's Day, because every Father's Day, Jimmy rents out the UCLA girls softball field, and we do a big Father's Day softball game with all the kids and the ice cream truck and food truck. And it's a great, and I showed up that Sunday and I said, where's Jimmy? And the answer was, he's in bed. He can't move. And I said, what's going on? It's like he pulled every muscle in his body. playing Ted Cruz in basketball, and he literally can't move. And I was like, all right, well, as long as he's still paying for the ice cream truck, though, right? It's like, yeah, all right, I'm gonna go get a double. So they literally said he couldn't move. I know the game went on longer than it should have.
Yep.
They're probably less prolific scoring than we were looking for, but you won 11-9, and they supposed to go to 15. How are the terms with Jimmy? How are you guys? How do you finish with it?
So they're fine. I mean, look, the whole thing that was surreal and as much fun as I may have ever had, and sort of where that people hear Ted played one with Jimmy Kimmel. That sounds pretty bizarre, and it is pretty bizarre. People wonder, well, where did that come from? Where it came from? So I'm a diehard Houston Rockets fan. And I had been, so I go to a lot of Rockets game. I was at Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals when Golden State beat us.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy went on TV the next day and put a picture of me at the game and blamed me for the loss. Said the reason that the Rockets lost is Ted was there and he cursed the Rockets. And so I got a little irritated, so I jumped on Twitter and I said, all right, big guy, you talk a good game. Let's settle this man-to-man, one-on-one hoops. The loser gives $5,000 to the charity, the winner's choice. And I actually suggested you as the ref. I said, look, let's have Adam ref it. We'll do this. Jimmy comes back at me at Twitter, and we're tweeting back and forth. It's very funny. Heidi was in bed. It was past midnight, and I'm sitting in the bedroom. The lights are out, and Heidi's like, Ted, come to bed. I'm like, no, I'm in a Twitter war with Jimmy Kimmel. I can't right now. And it ended up happening. We played one-on-one. It may have been the worst game of basketball in the history of mankind. We beat the living crap out of each other. I mean, neither of us wanted to lose, and there were so many fouls. The next day when I walked in the bathroom, Heidi looked at me, I probably had 50 bruises up and down my torso because we were just, elbowing and punching. And it was, ESPN, when they were broadcasting, 6,000 people come out and watch it at Texas Southern University. And ESPN said at the time, if Dr. Naismith saw what happened here, he would have invented a different game. It was terrible, but it was fun, and we ended up raising over $80,000 for charity. So it was, Jimmy was a good sport to do it, and he showed up and had fun with it, and I'm glad at the end of the day to have won. Neither one of us wanted to lose, and at least that day it worked out.
Good. I'm glad because I do feel I find myself in this position a lot, knowing a lot of comedians and left-leaning people and folks from Hollywood, and then also knowing your Ben Shapiro's and your Dennis Pragers of the world and types like that. I always go, first off, I wouldn't be friends with bad people. It's kind of a weird jump to make, a leap to make. You go, well, you're friends with Jimmy, he's a good guy, but then you're friends with Dennis Prager, he's a bad guy. It's like, why would I be friends with a bad guy? Why would I be friends with a racist? Why would I be friends with a hater?
Sure,
what are you saying about me? And if you two, whoever you are on the right and whoever you are on the left, if we all went out to dinner, you guys would enjoy the shit out of each other's company. You have a ton in common. Also, you both live your lives the same way. You're super family oriented. You pay your taxes. You're good in your community. You're good citizens. Like you both. The thing that's comical is you live the same life. It's not even like we're talking about that he's pagan. That guy's into Santeria, and that guy's a Jehovah's Witness. You guys live the same life.
I'm Cuban. Don't be knocking Santeria.
Sorry. You both live the same life. That's the comedy.
But you have this kind of unique position, Adam, which is I think you're the only guy in Hollywood who is friends with Jimmy Kimmel and Ted Cruz, right? You occupy the space where you're friends with people on both sides. So it seems to me like if there's a coronavirus super spread in L.A., it could only be you because you're the one who's friends with both halves.
Yeah, I'm the bridge who brings it from one side of the aisle to the next. First things first. There's a freedom in sort of being an atheist, and a freedom in not being educated, and a freedom in just sort of growing up with no self-esteem that I just float around and go, I like that guy. And they go, yeah, but you know what that guy thinks about that? I go, I don't know. I like that guy, and I like that guy over there. I don't. this notion, which is dangerous, is sort of everyone's got to pick a major.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and they do it in comedy. I mean, in comedy, it's like you can't like Letterman and Leno. And I'm like, why couldn't you like Letterman and Leno? Because you got to pick. And it's like, really? You have to pick? Why? That's all self-imposed. Yeah. We're making all that up. You don't have to pick that.
Well, and I think it sucks what has happened to comedy. That look, Donald Trump's election, I think it's broken the media. I think Hollywood has lost their mind. And comedy, like, look, I love good comedy. I grew up watching an SNL. I like watching the late night shows. And by the way, I like laughing at both sides. I mean, I'm perfectly good with, make fun of Republicans, make fun of Democrats. There's a lot to make fun of. But what's happened in the last couple of years, and Jimmy, I've done his show. I think Jimmy is one of the late night comics who you've seen in the last 4 years of Trump's presidency sort of move left where the entire monologue is all about attacking Trump. And Colbert is worse. Colbert just sort of is a partisan scream. And it'd kind of be better to be like, okay, fine, I got it. You don't like Trump. Okay, we got that. Can you tell any other joke? And listen, I think Jimmy is somewhat trapped by the crazy political world of Hollywood. As you know, there's a big effort to try to cancel him. I don't think they should cancel him. I'm speaking up for him, and it's the left that's coming after him. I mean, there's some irony. He tells a lot of jokes at my expense. Okay, that's fine. That's good comedy. I wish, so much of comedy, it used to be, all right, one of my favorite movies, Team America.
Right.
Team America is absolutely hysterical, and it skewers both sides. I mean, it skewers both sides beautifully. Right now in the comedy world, they're only making fun of one side, and it's too mean-spirited. It's not funny anymore.
Well, the story goes, which is, somebody, I was talking about this the other day on this podcast, which is like Johnny Carson, and there's a kind of misnomer that he didn't do political stuff. No, here's what Johnny Carson did. He did political stuff, right and left. You have to do political stuff. You do a late night show. That's the news cycle. You have to do it. But here's the difference. We didn't know what his politics were.
Right.
I think that's what we're saying. It's not don't do political stuff. It's when you're done doing your political jokes, right and left, go home. And at the end of the day, I have no idea where you stand. And frankly, I kind of like you like an umpire. Like, I don't want to know your favorite team. I just call balls and strikes, and I'll enjoy the game.
And after Carson, Leno did some of that too, where he would make fun of both sides, and that's good comedy.
I had a funny, I think I had a funny response to, I was talking to Dave Rubin, and he said, there's a fair bit of Republicans out there in Hollywood and comedy and stuff like that. He said, but how do you know? Like, how do you know who's a Republican, or how do you know who's leans to the right or is more conservative? I said, it's easy. Just figure out the comedian, figure out the commentator, figure out the personality, and find out the ones that don't say anything.
Yeah.
And then if they don't say anything, then you know. That's the secret handshake.
It's so odd, though, because you remember back when there was FOA, the Friends of Abe, this kind of secret conservative thing out here, there were a lot of people. There were thousands of members, but they were all too afraid. I mean, genuinely believed their lives would be ruined if they were photographed at one of these events, and maybe that would be the case. A lot of them were blacklisted. How do they have that power? If there are thousands of them, then why don't they just speak up? I never understood it.
Well, and that's actually where Michael and I first met, was through Friends of Abe. And I remember back in 2013. So Friends of Abe, as you know, was this gathering of conservative, right of center, libertarian people in entertainment. And I came and spoke, I think, in 2013.
Yeah.
And they had about 400 or 500 people, that big crowd. And I have never in my life, before or since, spoken to a group where people were so afraid. They had a rule: no photographs. Everyone takes cell phone pictures of everything. No photographs. And it was not. Now, there were a couple of high-profile people. So John Voight was there, and he was sort of a big enough star that he could get away with it. Actually, a person I met there was Bruce Jenner when he was Bruce Jenner.
Yeah.
He was there, but you had gaffers, you had key grips, you had lighting guys, you had makeup people who were terrified. If I am photographed here, if anyone finds out that I'm not on the left, I'm unemployed. And it was, I actually think if we had gone to a Satanist devourer of live kittens convention, they would not have been as afraid as they were. And there's a McCarthyism that's not a good. And that was in 2013 before Trump. So where it is today is orders of magnitude worse.
Well, it's a perfect storm of, I'm a carpenter and I've worked with a lot of carpenters and I've worked with a lot of guys who do a lot of fabrication work and real good at building race cars and stuff like that. When you have a real viable, tangible skill, you'll always be employed because people always go, I don't care what I think of that guy. That guy does kick-ass carpentry. I'm getting him over to my house. You'll never be out of work. You have a sort of impunity. Hollywood's different.
Yep.
Anyone, you see all those movies where you go, it was going to originally supposed to play the part of Superman. They named Tom Selleck was originally, and it's like, yeah, that's right. Everyone is interchangeable.
Yeah.
Everyone could be swapped out for that. There's 3 or 4 guys that really are untouchable, and then everyone else below those guys, everyone realizes it's a popularity contest. We're back in high school, and you could get voted out into the cornfield, and they understand it.
And to be fair, Tom Selleck couldn't play Superman because he can't shave the mustache, and it wouldn't work with
You'd
Superman
have to rewrite
with
the
stash.
character. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
But they understand it, and by the way, not only understand it, they've seen it happen dozens and dozens of times. The A-list actress that was hot and red hot and on fire, and you go, you go, well, what's her name? What was the girl from the? I can't even remember.
So let me give you an example, an A-list example. Do you know who has not appeared in a major movie in over a decade?
Christopher Reeve.
Okay, true. You got me there.
Well, I was on the Superman.
All right, so that I can't blame Hollywood bias, but I
still do.
Richard Gere.
Oh, Richard Gere.
Richard Gere, because he spoke out for Tibet.
Oh, Tibet.
He took on China. So I actually had a chance to meet Richard Gere. He came to the Senate and was speaking out against Chinese oppression. And go back and look. And, he was in a ton of movies as an officer and a gentleman.
Every movie.
And, he was an A-list, major star. And go pull up his list of films. In a decade, no major studio will hire him because he's dared criticize communist China. And it doesn't matter if you're Richard Gere, you're done. You're doing small independent films because we're distributing to China and we want to make a buck.
That China issue, it kind of shows it to me, too, because it is just about that buck. And, we talk a lot on the show about, the oppression, the systems of oppression, the institutional oppression that the left is always prattling on about. But the left controls all of those institutions, right? The media, Hollywood, big tech, administrative government, all these sorts of things. And so it does seem to me at this point, if even Richard Gere can be effectively canceled because he speaks out against the Communist Party of China, you kind of just have to build the pirate ship, don't you? You kind of have to do exactly what you did.
Look, for people who never stop talking about paying your fair share and blah, 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 10 years ago, I was doing a show in Winnipeg, of all places, and it was the middle of the winter, and no one should go to Winnipeg in the middle of the winter. But anyway, I was getting walked to my room, and the guy who was walking my room in the hotel said, is it the room in the end, the suite at the end? I said, who? And he said, Samuel L. Jackson. And I said, why? And he said, because he's shooting a movie out here. And I thought, where's the movie supposed to take place? It was it's supposed to take place in Chicago. He's a cop. It's wintertime. They're trading out Winnipeg for Chicago. Samuel L. Jackson is one of the biggest voices of pay your fair share and pay your tax. He lives in Beverly Hills. Who's the first guy to hop on a plane and go to Winnipeg and shoot a movie to save a couple of dollars in taxes and credits? Samuel L. Jackson. So the group who talks the most about doing the right thing and what's wrong with paying more and blah, blah, the first people to hop on a plane. I drove Bryan Cranston to the Burbank airport from this studio because he's shooting Breaking Bad in New Mexico. He's a very liberal guy. He's all for, raise the taxes and blah, blah, blah. But I'm also giving him a ride to New Mexico to shoot 4 or 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. That's how people work. And to come full circle,
and Breaking Bad was so good. I
so
watched
good.
every episode, and it was, and it's a little bit funny that he was the dad on Malcolm in the Middle. I mean, it's like holy cow! Talk about Ward Cleaver suddenly is a meth dealer. That was a pretty dramatic shift.
That is because he's a great actor, but it's funny getting back to McCarthyism. One of his last roles or bigger roles was Trumbo, who was the writer who was blacklisted during McCarthyism. And once I had Dinesh D'Souza on this show, and Brian shot me an email, and he said, you shouldn't have Dinesh D'Souza on your show. And I said, why not? I said, well, the guy shouldn't be talking. Basically, I don't approve of that guy being on the show. And I thought, you're shooting a movie called Trumbo right now about McCarthyism, about someone with an opinion that's different than the mainstream opinion being silenced, and you're explaining to me that Dinesh D'Souza shouldn't be welcome on my show. That's where we're at.
Seems to me that one of the casualties of the plagues and everything we've been living through, social and otherwise, is irony. There is no irony left.
Well, the point is, Brian's a great guy. He's a talented guy, and I love that guy. But that's the way they think now, and they don't understand. What they think is he's a bad guy. He shouldn't get a microphone.
Yeah.
My feeling is let's hear everyone's ideas, and then let us decide who the bad guys are.
Well, and look, free speech, diversity, being willing to accept that people are different. There are all sorts of policies. I'm a big believer, which we started the show by talking about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. One of the really genius ideas at the heart of this country, at the heart of the Constitution, is federalism, that we're today 50 states, and we're diverse, different states, and we can have totally different policies, and that's okay. Let's take something like drug legalization. So personally, I'm not in favor of drug legalization. But at the same time, I think it's a question for the states. And so if some states want to legalize pot and other states don't, I think that's a reasonable decision. And we ought to have a little more tolerance of diversity to say, okay, you can do different things in different places. And one of the advantages is that you can see what works. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis talked about the states as laboratories of democracy. You can see what policies work and what don't, but today's left doesn't want to see that. They want to see whatever they believe mandated for anyone, and anyone who dissents driven out of society. And that, I don't think that makes any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and it's also big picture mathematically impossible to ever work out in any way that we would find satisfactory as Americans. It's just impossible. Even the ones who want it the most are going to suffer under its regime.
But doesn't this also raise this issue of whether or not we can even speak to each other? I mean, I've seen this on these college campuses in recent years. All the kids in college and their professors will say there's no such thing as truth. Truth is relative. There's your truth. There's my truth. There's this truth. If there's no objective truth, right? If the language that I use is not basically the same language that you use, we can't communicate. And then politics just becomes this brute battle of interests and burning down the country and pulling down statues. Isn't that what we see all around us?
Well, and if you're comfortable with what you believe, if you're confident, you and I talked for 10 minutes about school choice. I'm happy to talk to any leftist about school choice all day long and talk about it on the merits. But if you're afraid, if you're a socialist and you know that your ideas don't work, then you're afraid of people who have differing views. You know, Reagan had a great way of putting it. When the Berlin Wall divided East and West Berlin, the way Reagan put it is he said, the thing that the left never seems to notice is the machine guns all point in one direction. People are fleeing communism and coming to freedom. As a Cuban American, the way I like to put it is the thing the left never seems to notice down in Key West. The rafts are all going one direction. Just once, I'd like to see some socialists get on a little inflatable raft and head 90 miles south to the utopian socialist paradise where there's misery and poverty and suffering. It doesn't work. If you're comfortable with what you believe, you should be more than comfortable having someone disagree and then having a discussion on the merits. And if you're trying to silence your opposition, it's a sign of weakness, and we see that especially in college campuses.
You know, we've seen these social scientific studies that show the left doesn't understand what the right is saying nearly as well as the right understands what the left is saying. Makes perfect sense, right? We live in a left-wing culture, so obviously we're just going to know the arguments on the other side. But if you don't know what the other side really thinks, it's easy to fill your head with all these fears and sort of scary things and shut them up.
I agree. Prager always says, we know them, they don't know us. Every airport in the United States has CNN running 24/7.
Yep.
It's not avoidable.
Yeah.
It's part of the culture. The Los Angeles Times, I live in Los Angeles. That's right here. It's ubiquitous. It's impossible to not know what the left is saying. I do totally believe that if the left got to know voices like Thomas Sowell or Dennis Prager or something, they would have a completely different understanding of that. But it's also part of it is the narcissism of not seeking it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a certain narcissism in it. It's very accessible. It's out there. You can find it. All you need is your phone to find Thomas Sowell, Dennis Prager, and all these different voices out there. Ben Shapiro, any of these voices, Michael Knowles, any of these voices out there, you're not seeking them out. And I don't think that you can craft an opinion, an argument, or debate unless you're aware of what the other people are saying. So I like to hear what everyone's saying.
Absolutely.
Not for them, for me. But I got to craft something. I need their input. I want to watch game film. In other words, I'm trying to put together a defensive scheme. I need to watch some game film. I'm not going to not watch the game film. I want to study the team.
But that point requires humility. I mean, the humility, I think, is the key here. We now celebrate pride as a virtue in the culture. But if you think maybe I don't know everything, maybe I need to hear the other point of view, maybe I need to work on my arguments, that requires a humility. You think of like the smartest guy that ever lived, Socrates. He said, I don't know anything. And you know what they did to that guy? He didn't live a long, happy life, you know. And I think it's a rare virtue these days.
It also requires a desire to actually understand the truth, a desire to learn. Listen, as a consumer of news, I don't know a single place you can go to get the news. I try to hear from people on the left, the right, libertarians. I try to hear a range of things and synthesize somewhere in the middle. In today's, you see it in Hollywood, you see it in big business, you see it in journalism, there's an element in which politics is like the clothing of morality. It's virtue signaling, where it doesn't really matter. We had protests all over and Black Lives Matter, and I had a friend of mine who sent an email, why aren't you out protesting? And I'm like, look, I have been passionate about civil rights my entire life. There's a reason that I was the only U.S. senator in the Senate to go to Nelson Mandela's funeral. There's a reason why I represented pro bono a capital defendant who was wrongfully convicted of murder before the U.S. Supreme Court and got exonerated based on DNA evidence. There's a reason I've spent 30 years fighting for school choice, because civil rights are powerful and profound and meaningful, but you actually have to care about the substance. You look at polling right now where you ask people, do you agree with Black Lives Matter? And naturally, everyone says, yes, it's a truism. Of course, Black Lives Matter. Yes, Black Lives Matter.
It's like saying good things are good. Everybody agrees with that statement.
But that is different from the organization that's called Black Lives Matter, where the organizers are avowed Marxists. They state, we are Marxist. We're seeking the overthrow of the government. We want to abolish the police. That's not the truism that, yes, Black Lives Matter. And by the way, what the group Black Lives Matter is advocating would kill more African Americans. You abolish the police, and you will see low-income people dying at a greater rate. I want to protect them, and it's the reason I spent 30 years fighting to do so. But you've got to actually care about the substance, not just I'm putting a bumper sticker on my car to show how woke I am.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And not only that, but when you put the bumper sticker on that says, tolerance with all the different symbols or whatever, inclusivity or whatever it says on there, you're also appeasing yourself and your neighbors. You're sort of letting yourself off the hook. It's basically the version of that was, I gave at the office.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That was the running joke. The kid comes by, March of Dimes. I gave at the office. Like, don't bother me. I already did. I put the bumper sticker on the Prius. I put coexist on my Prius. I'm done. I did my work.
I had this big fear when the rioters were coming up through L.A. They were going down Sunset Boulevard. It was right where I live. And I have an American flag in the back of my car, just right in the back windshield. And I thought, that flag's not so popular with the rioters these days. I don't want to lose my windshield. Should I take it out? And I thought, well, if I take out the flag to appease the mob, why was I flying it in the first place? What's the point of that flag? But these symbols now, appeasing the mob, don't appease the mob, they're taking on a lot of importance.
I know you guys have a hard out. Your people are saying you got to get out of here, and I got to get out of here too. So, because I feel like we could go on for 5 hours with this discussion. So hopefully we'll do it again soon. Let me just hit Simply Safe. No one should feel unsafe at home, period. And that's why there is Simply Safe. They're on a mission, and that mission is to provide security for you and your family. Free shipping, and you can just go to simplysafe.com/Adam. The podcast, it's also a video podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, is excellent. It's short, little digestible, seems to me about 35, 40-minute chunks. They pretty much stay on a subject, and at the end of that, you become an expert on that subject. Michael Knowles as well, you can find over at, let's see, with Shapiro, right?
Yeah, over at the Shapiro crew, over at the Daily Wire.
Daily Wire. Michael J. Knowles with a K. MichaelJKnowles.com is where you go. Ted Cruz, tedcruz.org is where you go and shoot him a tweet at Ted Cruz as well. You can go to AdamCarolla.com. I do doing live shows, coming to Texas, coming to Addison, doing the Improv, then coming back to San Antonio. Who's scared to travel? Not this comedian. So go to AdamCarolla.com. I'm your emotional support animal. My book is back up on Amazon, so check that out as well. Ed Calderon's going to come on tomorrow and get us caught up all things Mexico and narco and all that kind of stuff. Ted, Michael, this has been a delight. And until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Ted Cruz and Michael Knowles saying mahalo.